compromise and common ground, we must never abandon these.
I lost a brother-in-law to an overdose.
James Madison said,
Long story short,
is
yes,
the most
I can
sacred of all
relate
property.
to other people's experiences.
United in coming to the relation of thought and eternity, we are all undoubtedly shaped by our experiences
Thank you very
and
much.
guided
Before I get
by
started,
our
I want to thank
consciences and values. In
Beans
our
Memorial
attempt to find
Library
a
for
compromise and
inviting us
common
all here
ground, we must never
tonight,
abandon these.
as well as thank
James
you all
Madison
for
said,
having interest
conscience
enough to come and
is the
hear
most
what we all
sacred of
have
all
to say.
property.
I appreciate thank you very much. I'm going to try to be as short as possible so that I can give more time to folks that actually have for inviting us all here tonight. But just to give you a little background, I having interest enough to come and hear what we all have to say. Mr. Nelson mentioned that appreciate a secret that manual reaching out to me, have a background in education to be on the school committee. I have no background in education. I'm going to try to be as short as possible so that I can give more time to the folks that actually have an opponent. 1973, as a matter of fact, when I graduated. But just to give you a little background, I first 40 years. Did everything she could. Nelson mentioned that from becoming a secret that have a background in education. There were no jobs in the field. I have no background in education. Much has changed since then. I've served on the school committee for a total of 10 years. Going into broadcast journalism, and that's where 1973, as a matter of fact, when I graduated from high school. I first served on the committee from 1999 to 2002. Did everything she could. I ran at that time because I had 2 daughters. At that time, there were stepdaughters, but to me, they're my daughters. I don't know if much changed since then. And so I ended up going into broadcast districts, and I wanted to get involved and see what was happening with their education. I first served on the committee from 1999 to 2002. I ran at that time because I had 2 daughters. Now I have their children. We're stepdaughters, but to me, they're my daughters. One of the things that motivates me in 2015, and I've been, they briefed my daughters were in the district, and I wanted to get involved and see what was happening with their education. We're faced, to the extent that I could, issues and what was going on in these state law regarding. Now I have their children, education, and that was one of the things that motivated me to run a little over my head in 2015. And I've been briefed by the other committee members working together. You kind of understand what's. So I'll admit that there are times that need to be addressed. We're faced with how best to address issues, and we don't always agree. State law. In fact, at our last committee meeting, we had some disagreements. Education, respectfully. Frankly, I think that was important. At the time when I was elected, the other committee members working together, you come to understand was what's severely divided, the issues that need to be addressed, and how best we don't have disagreements. Name calling respectfully. I just didn't see that. That was another thing that motivated me to run for school committee. The time when I was elected in 2015 to town government. This town was important to me then that severely divided along some political lines. So I'm just going to You've had a chance to see my work on the committee.
Okay, thanks very much. And I just want to ask the audience, if you will, with restrain your applause until we get to the end, because we want to give the candidates as much time as possible to speak. It's an equitable thing. We've got a lot of questions here. Okay, thanks very much. And I just like to so our first question, the audience, if you will, these are questions submitted via restrain your applause until we get to the end, because we want to give the candidates as much time as possible. Responsibilities and expectations of school committee members. I just think that would describe your ability. Equitable thing. We've got a lot of questions here. Thank you very much. And so our first question. These are questions submitted via email.
Openly communicate and collaborate with the superintendent. Be responsive to the community that we serve. Develop, evaluate, and oversee educational policies. It's a broad system.
Describe your ability
a wide spectrum.
to fulfill these responsibilities and expectations.
And that's in terms of curriculum. I mean, generally, the school committee is a mission. Overall, I think openly communicate and collaborate with the superintendent.
Has more.
Be responsive to the community that we serve.
The case.
Develop, evaluate, and
oversee
oversee educational policies, educational materials.
That is left up to the superintendent, the principals, and the teachers.
And that's in terms of curriculum. I mean, generally, the school committee
And
Overall, I think
informing
some
myself
people think
of
that
what it is that the
the
school
school
is
committee maybe
using
has
more,
more
also
oversight
having a conversation
if
when
I
that's
have
not necessarily
questions,
the
not
case.
necessarily trying
So
to
in
prescribe
terms of like
anything.
textbooks,
Educational materials,
I mean,
the
that
school
is
committee
left up
determines
to
whether
the
educational goals and
the
standards for
principals
student
and
performance
for
are
being
teachers.
met. So
And I think the state and federal regulations
informing myself
are very
what it
clear,
is
and
that
I
the school
think
is using.
but then also
Working
having a
with the current
conversation if I have
superintendent
questions,
that came
not
just to
necessarily
ensure
trying to
that
prescribe
teachers
and
are
meeting those expectations and standards. The
is
school committee determines
important.
whether educational goals and standards for
and then
student
I would
performance are
collaborate
being
with
met.
colleagues,
And
constantly.
I
I do
think
that now.
the state
So
and
it's
federal
not
regulations
departure
of what I
are,
already do.
very
And
clear.
in terms
And I
of
think,
budget, I oversee a pretty robust student
working
activities
with
budget
the
that
current
mentions school, so
superintendent
I
that
do
came
understand
to
kind of
ensure
budgetary
that
restrictions
teachers
and
are
allocation of
meeting those
money, but
expectations
again,
and standards
that would just be in
is
conjunction with
important.
the administration, business
And
office.
then I would collaborate
and
with colleagues,
I pride myself on
constantly.
I do
Yes.
that understanding
So it's
for
not a departure
stakeholders
of
to
what I
ensure
already do.
policies,
in
procedures,
terms
budgets,
of
budget. I
responsibilities and
oversee
expectations are met
student
for all.
activities budget at the Winchendon School, so I do understand kind of budgetary restrictions and allocation of money, but again, that would just be in conjunction with the administration, business
I'm gonna
office.
keep mine short and sweet.
And I mean, I pride
My
myself on
understanding of
communicating
the role is to
improve
write and
understanding
maintain
for
policies that guide the
stakeholders
district,
to ensure
to
policies,
approve and monitor
procedures,
the
budgets,
budget of the
responsibilities,
school
and
system,
expectations are met
and
for
to
all.
hire and evaluate the superintendent. I believe there is some questions regarding curriculum later on, so I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. My understanding in terms of my abilities to maintain. I have the good fortune to talk to a sitting monitor the budget committee member who's currently on the hire and evaluate the superintendent. And I still believe there is someone else who served here later on, so for quite some time. And both of them, I told them, in terms of my abilities, I had the good fortune to talk to a sitting committee member, you know, on the committee, willing to put in the time, we spoke homework, and I spoke to someone else who served here. And we talked about quite some time, we talked about our abilities, and both of them, I told them, you know, my background in education, so my time constraints, and my abilities, it's an hour training and really, you know, get a handle. I'm willing to put in the time, the role of homework, and go through the training. Can I do this? You know, and we talked about schedule, and we talked about abilities, and both of them told me.
Yeah, Mr. Nelson's right. By statute, the school committee has three main roles: to hire the superintendent, to oversee the budget,
The role as a whole.
and to set policy. We do also, when the position becomes open, will endorse the superintendent's. Yes, Mr. Nelson's right. By statute, the school committee has three main roles: to hire the, beyond that, by law, there is a whole lot of power that the school committee has to set policy. We do also, back in 1994, when the position becomes open, will endorse that school committees. There was a business manager, which was done recently for the district. When it comes to, beyond that, curriculum, law, there is a whole lot of power that the school committee has. Not just curriculum, but policy. When we hire a superintendent, back in 1990, hire administrators who are going to carry out ed reform. The plans that we've set for that school committees, there was a school board that does have a role in there, is setting plans for how the district should proceed. When it comes to, we do a 5-year plan, and we treat every year. And not just curriculum, but policy. When we hire a superintendent, and trust him to hire administrators who are going to carry out our plans that we've set forward for the district. We put our trust in the superintendent, we put our trust in the administrative plans for how our district should proceed. We do a 5-year plan, we meet and have a meeting every year and try to set out and to the administrator, completing and express our concerns. We can bring parent concerns to them. We put our trust in the superintendent, we put our trust in the administrators, and we put our trust as far as my ability to carry out my role on, you know, we can school committee. I think I've expressed a fairly decent job to the administrators and to the teachers. We can talk over to, we can express our concerns, we can bring parent concerns to them. I'll stop, but ultimately, the decision making is left up to the administrators. As far as my ability to carry out my role on the school committee, I think I've done
And by the way, if you need
a
these
fairly
questions
decent job in my
read when it
10
gets
years.
started, just let me know.
And I look forward to another
What
3.
role does the school committee play
I'll stop and I'll leave it
in
there.
school or district decisions such as curriculum, hiring or discipline of administration, staff, and teachers? Or, and by the way, if you need these questions read when it gets to you, about an individual teacher. What role this time does the school committee play in
So my
school
understanding
or
is
district
directly
decisions such
none.
as curriculum,
These would first fall
hiring
under the
or
purview of
discipline
the
of
superintendent.
administration,
The
staff, and
superintendent would be
teachers?
held responsible
Or
for
in
resolving
addressing parent
any issues in a
complaints
timely and
about
effective
an
manner.
individual teacher?
I was already told by a sitting committee member that we are not the complaint department.
So my understanding is
So we
directly
do need to go
none.
through the proper channels. These would first fall reach out to a teacher, superintendent, to a principal. Superintendent would be held responsible for
And if the issue is still not
any
resolved,
issues in a
and
timely
it's a serious
and
issue,
effective manner.
then it would be between.
I was already told by a
School
sitting
committee and the
committee member that
superintendent.
we are not the complaint department. So
My understanding
in
in other districts, I know we are limited, our
Parents should
hands
reach
are
out to a
tied,
teacher and then to a principal.
But my understanding is other districts, is we can
And if the
see
issue is still not resolved, and
it's
it's
a
a serious
request
issue,
and
review
between
new curriculum
school
and
committee
textbooks
and
and
the
the
superintendent
superintendent
as part of the budget process.
I realize
My understanding is other
different.
districts, I
Some
know we are
states
limited,
are
viral videos we're seeing, it's
but
the
my
school committee
understanding
is
is
being
other
held
districts
responsible, can see
for the content
in
of the
schools.
You know, we can
Now,
now,
request, and
again,
we might be
reviewed
viewed of a different
new
position,
curriculum
but
textbooks
if
that are
we're
being purchased.
approving our
as part of
budget
the
that's
process.
going to pay for those materials,
I realize
I think
it's in our best interest as a
different
committee to
than
actually
some
know what
states,
those
but
materials are.
all the viral
And
videos
if we
we're
had all the
seeing, it's the
problems
school committees
with any
being
questionable
responsible
content
for
before
the content in the schools.
an issue arises, and then we're being reactionary.
We might be in a little bit of a different position, but if we're approving a budget that is going to pay for those materials, I think it's in our best interest as a committee to actually know what
Correct.
those materials are.
Mr. Nelson is right.
Head off a
Basically,
problem
we don't have a
With any
role
questionable content
in
before
disciplining teachers or
an issue arises, and then
administrators
we're being
beyond the
reactionary.
superintendent.
Thank you.
And it's sometimes, I'll be honest, it's frustrating because parents will come to us and have concerns or complaints about a teacher.
Mr. Nelson is right.
Basically, we don't have.
We'd like to be able to get in there
in
and
disciplining teachers or speak to them and try to
Administrators,
address the issue,
beyond
be
the
able to come back and give them the
Yeah.
answers that, it's sometimes out that they want. To be honest, it's
Or that they-
frustrating
they
because
just
parents
believe
will
they
come
deserve,
to us
but it
and
just-
have
it doesn't work
concerns,
out.
so it can be very frustrating, or an administrator. Again, when we
We'd
hire,
like to be able to
get
get
in there and we hire them,
with the
speak to them and try to address the
decisions
issue
that
and be
they're
able to
going
come
to
back to a parent, frankly, I think our last decision, the answers that hiring Mr. King was a good, that they want, or that they believe that
we
they
do
deserve,
have
but it just, it doesn't
some
work.
role in
So it
curriculum,
can be
just
very
in terms
frustrating. Again, when
Mr.
we hire
Nelson
them,
said,
being advised of what's happening, we hire them with the understanding that they trust the decisions that they're going to make. Frankly, I think our last decision to the folks that hiring Mr. King was a good one, that's the administrators, the principals, the superintendents. We do have some role in curriculum, just in terms of, and it is good, as Mr. Nelson said, being advised what's happening in the classroom, what's being taught, take a look at comments, and get to offer advice, look at the lessons that are being given, they're still left up, the more you understand the spirit of the schools, and that's the more you're going to have, the better your input is going to be when you approach finding classroom teachers with your concern. And it is good if parents know what's going on in the classroom, what's being taught, take a look at the books that kids are bringing home, take a look at the lessons they're being given.
Okay.
The more you
So,
understand as a parent,
I mean, not to
the more input you're
reiterate,
going
but I
to have,
understand
and the better your
the
input is
hiring
going
and
to be when you
oversight
approach
regarding
the school
teachers and
district.
administrators, and in terms of discipline, I know that with the exception of the superintendent, the school committee does not necessarily get involved. However, I will say that regarding curriculum and understanding what is going on in the school system, and I think personally, I would absolutely want to know and fully understand all of the standards and the curriculum, not to meddle, But
to
however,
just
I will say
understand
that
what is happening
regarding
in
curriculum
the
and
school system,
understanding what is
if
going
I
on
am
in the system,
ill-informed,
how can I
that's
be a
important.
servant to the
And I
community?
think
So that would be one of the things that I would bring to the table.
absolutely
And
want
overall, in
to know
terms of
and
hiring
fully understand
and
evaluating
evaluating
who
who
could
could
be
be
an
an
effective
effective
superintendent,
or
but
if
to just
there were other
understand what is
questions that
happening
came
in
up,
each and every
I
school system.
definitely have that
If
experience.
I am
I'm
ill-informed,
part of
how can I be
an
a servant
administrative
to
team
the
that brings in
community?
teachers
So
each and every
that
day,
would
which
be
is
one of the things
and
that I would
bring to the table.
And
Overall, in terms of hiring and evaluating who could be an
regardless of
effective
whether or not you are
superintendent,
going to
or
be
if
in,
there were other
in a position
questions
of
that came up, I definitely have that experience. I'm a part of an administrative team that brings in teachers each and every year at the graduate school, and part of evaluating and giving feedback and collaborating, which I think is one I would say in every instance. But regardless of whether or not you are going to be in the school committee or in a position of power of selectmen, to make decisions, and not everyone is going to agree. But you have to be able to have the conversation, fully understand and meet on common ground. Because, I mean, I'm not gonna say in every instance, but
Question
regardless of
3.
the role of the school committee or even
How
the
can
board
a
of
school
selectmen, I mean,
committee
people
know
make decisions and not everyone's
if
going
its
to agree.
goals are
But
being
you
accomplished
have to be able to
and
have
its
the conversation
policies
in
are
an
being
informed
implemented.
conversation, so.
So, Greg, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, as I said, one of the things that we've done as a school
Question
committee in
3.
recent years was to establish an
How can a
annual
school
retreat
committee
where the school
know
committee gets together and
if its goals
takes a
are
look at the
being
goals that we've
accomplished
set
and its
and see
policies
which goals are being met
implemented?
and where we're falling behind.
So,
At
we'll
that
start with
time, we try to come up with strategies.
Well,
for
as I
meeting
said,
those
one of the
goals
things that
where
we
we are
are
done as a school committee in recent years was to establish.
You've been improving upon
those
those
annual
goals
retreat
that
where the
we've
school
set,
committee
that's
gets
been
together
accomplished,
and
that has been reached.
takes a look at the goals that we've set and see which
I think
goals
it's
are being
important,
met and where we're
again,
falling
that
behind. The school committee
at
stay
that time,
involved, we try to come up with strategies for meeting those goals, what's going on in the district. And it takes more than just one
improving
retreat
upon
for the year to
those
see what's
goals that
happening.
we've set.
Then as a result, we get an update from the superintendent on each school committee meeting.
I think it's important
place we get updates
again,
periodically from the
school committee
administrators
stay
as to
involved,
problems that they might be having, as well as updating us on
understanding what's going on.
improvements that we're
in the
seeing
district.
and testing scores. It takes more than just one retreat per year to see what's happening. And also, as a result, we get an update from the superintendent on behind. School committee that lets the school committee know where we get more resources need to be applied. Administrators, so about the students having classes, rigor in those classes, improvements that we're seeing and testing scores. So the past few years does have a role. And also problems where as limited as it is, are falling behind. It's not insignificant. That lets the school committee know where more resources need to be applied so that the students are getting the kind of classes and rigor in those classes that they need to learn
I think,
and to improve.
yes, trust
So
the information that's
it does
provided,
have a
because I
role,
think the person
as
who
limited
kind of delivers
as
the
it
information to the
is,
school committee is the
it's not
superintendent,
insignificant.
and also his support principals and the building leaders, but I don't follow people blindly just on what they are necessarily telling me time in and time out. I do like to have
I think,
a little bit of information.
Yes,
that I
trusting
can
the information that's
gather
provided,
on my
because I
own
think
to,
the person
I would say
who kind of
compliment
delivers the
what I'm
information to
being
the school
told,
committee is the
because
superintendent,
I do
and
like
also
to try to determine
his
for
support
myself
leaders,
what's
but,
going on.
I
And
don't follow people blindly
so I
based
think
on
what they are necessarily
asking
telling me
questions.
time
Having
in and
informal
time out. I
conversations
do
with
like to
teachers.
have a little bit of
When I
information
taught
that I
in
can
Lisbon Central and
gathered on my
Learn
own.
to,
I remember having access to our
compliment
Board of
what
Education,
I'm being
and
told,
there were great
because I do
conversations.
like to
And
try
again,
to
we didn't
determine,
always agree
for
with
myself
what
what's
they
going on.
had to say,
And,
and always agree with what we
so
had
I
to
think,
say. But the conversation
asking
needs to take
questions,
place so that they
having
can hear,
informal
because
conversations
they're
with
not in
teachers.
the classroom.
When I taught
They're not in
Lisbon
those
Central and
in
Learn
the
anymore.
trenches, and so
I
remember
the
having
school committee
access
does
to
need
our
some
Board
peer
of
education.
and there were great
what is
conversations.
going on
I mean, again, we
people
didn't
who are
always
actually
agree with what they
educating
had to say, and
students.
we always agree with
So,
what we had to say.
and I would be
conversation
present.
needed to take
I am
place so
present
that
at my
they
school
hear,
currently,
because they're not in the
my
classroom.
door is always open.
They're not
The
in
school
those
doesn't have an
in the
office, but
trenches, and
they
so
get into one.
the school committee does need to hear what is going on from the people who are actually educating
I like going
students. So,
right before Greg.
and I would be a presence.
That is
I am a presence at my
Mr.
school
Nelson's
currently,
program.
and my door is always open. The school committee doesn't have an office.
He
but
seems
maybe I
to
can-
know the current process, and it sounds like a good process. So all I have for notes on this is communication with the superintendent and an expectation that the superintendent will produce quantifiable, measurable results using whatever. He seems to know the bullying process and it's a good process. So all I have for notes on this is communication with the superintendent and an expectation that the superintendent can produce quantifiable, measurable results using whatever benchmarks apply to, reading skills. Then, obviously, if there's an issue with bullying, you're not looking at grades to see if your policy against bullying. I don't have a long response to that one, you would have to set a different benchmark for that. Whereas if you do have suffering math grades or,
Next question.
reading skills,
How much
then
control
you would use.
does the school committee have
SGP or
over
something
the
like that.
budget?
So,
And what would you do?
I don't have a long
School
response to
funding.
that one, that's.
How do you foresee building closures and/or regionalization playing in this? Next question. How much control does the school
So-
committee have over the budget?
I think right
And
now,
what would
the Wichita
you
Public
do
School,
to improve
from what,
school funding?
because I had a discussion with
How
that
do
thing,
you
and
foresee
he said
building
um,
closures
the budget is on
and
solid
or
footing, and I know
regionalization
that he has
playing
in
into
for
this?
extensive background in finances, and so,
Coalition.
without
Um,
really like,
So
beyond taking his word for it,
I think right now, the Wichita Public School, from what,
and at the last meeting where I attended, the school committee decided,
the budget is
to actually
actually
not
not
have
have
and
the added
I know that
expense
he has
because
created
sports,
which I thought was
and for
wonderful.
extensive
So I think
background
that also
analysis,
supports
so,
it. Without really like,
Additionally,
beyond taking his word for it,
I think the school committee definitely needs to understand where the needs are, but also
last meeting
meeting
where I
administration
attended, where
those
those committee
needs to be
decided,
met. Whether it's, if the school is underperforming, knowing in what areas according to the Common Core,
So I think that that
and
also supports
standardized tests that teachers
unfortunately
additionally,
have against, but that is the like, that
I
is
think the school
current
committee
system that
definitely
we
needs
have.
to,
But if
understand where the
students
needs
aren't
are,
in
but also
those
prep
three,
classes,
administration to tell
knowing
them
where to
they
allocate
need
the
to
money
be met.
to help,
Whether it's,
if the school is underperforming, knowing in what areas according to the class core, and the
or
standardized
some
tests
other,
that teachers unfortunately have held against. Academic
but that is
venture
like-
that is
that is
better
the
suited to where
current
they see
system that we
themselves
have.
after high school.
But if
And
students
I
aren't
think
in
collaboration
those
is definitely, like I
classes,
said, of
the
knowing
key
where to
to,
allocate the money to help
understanding
meet
funding.
the needs of the
I
students.
personally
regardless of
don't
whether or
think
not
that
they
the
are
building
in
closures or
like
regionalizing
class,
is going to be a part of it,
or
some other.
I mean, again,
This is the
um,
conversation that
academic venture that is
administrators,
better
and
suited to
I
where
don't
they
think
see
that that
themselves
is
after
something
high
that
school.
the Wichita School
And I
right
think collaboration
now
is definitely, like I said,
facing
a key
because
to
they are
understanding
pretty
funding.
solid footing,
I personally don't
funding-wise
think
and
that just building
budgetary-wise.
closures or
And
regionalizing
I
is going to
believe
be
that
a
they
part
were
of it.
given,
A 10%
increase
again,
with
this
the
is the
new,
conversation
formula
that I've
from
had
the state.
with a
So
few
that is
administrators,
also,
and I don't think that that is something that the Wichita School right now is facing
Kevin.
because they are on
So my understanding of
pretty
the
solid
process,
footing,
the superintendent
funding-wise
presents
and
the budget.
budgetary-wise.
School committee
And
will
I
review
believe
budget
that they were
for
given
approval.
a 10% increase
Last
with the
budget
new
meeting,
formula
members
from the
had to
state.
abstain
So that is
because
also,
it was done in whole instead of in part. So I think part of what we as a committee would need to push for. So my understanding of the process, the superintendent presents the budget, the school committee. I sat through the entire presentation. I don't know the last budget meeting, two members had to abstain because I was voted on in whole. The ability to have the committee vote up or down what we as line item would need to push for. It's necessary to vote on section and certainly something, especially with the hiring of. I sat through the entire presentation. I don't know how detailed their handouts were produced relatively easily, but the ability to have the committee vote up or down on. It's important to have a detailed line item budget. It's necessary for that reason. My understanding is, especially with the hiring district's finance director or business manager, I apologize if I have this title produced wrong, but I can easily tell from the meeting that it was a good acquisition to have him on board. It's my understanding to have charge detailed line item budget to secure for that reason. My understanding is the new district's finance director or the previous manager, I apologize if I have this title
that I
Ron,
believe is
but
going to fall on his shoulders.
meeting that
That
it's a good acquisition to have him on board now.
I don't have.
My
nothing
understanding, he will be
grasp on
charged with something
anything
regarding
to
civil
build
closures or
project
regionalization
for the district.
Thank you. It sounds like some members have previously done some grant writing.
And great.
Thank you very much.
That I believe is going to fall on his shoulders.
I'm actually going to start out with
Ready to do it.
regionalization.
I don't have enough of
and
the grasp
building
on
closures.
anything regarding building closures or
We,
regionalization.
in Winchendon, have seen a steady decline in the number of students that are attending our districts over the past few years. Thanks very much. And I think, quite frankly, I'm actually going to start out with where we have to look regionalization, consolidation, of building closures, at the very least, possibly moving classes out of Toy Town. Winchendon have seen a steady decline in the number of students that are possibly using our districts, Toy Town, the past few years as a resource. And I think, quite frankly, there's going to come a point where we have to look at daycare, at consolidation, at the very least, possibly moving classes out. And frankly, I also think that at some point, regionalization is possibly using that may be 5 or 10 years off, but as much as we don't like to talk about it, for the town that's going to face us, I think, providing daycare, and I think residents realize that, and start the district by taking advantage of district. And frankly, I also think that at some point, regionalization is going to have that be looked at, that maybe 5 or 10 years. As far as budgets, budgets are tough. We are on pretty solid footing right now. Faces the reasons to that more later. And I think it's because of some fairly substantial grants that we've received as a result of the Better Off we're going to see, and those grants coming from Better Off through the federal government plan for that future. And giving us a good as far as budgets are concerned, those grants go away and are tough. We are on pretty solid footing right now. Part of the reason that has decided not to use those very substantial extra grants that we've received as a result of the realization when the grants go away, those grants coming from staff you hire, but also federal government a couple of years, and giving us a good influx of cash. Those grants go away in a couple of years. Other issues that Mr. King within the district decided not to use those grants for staff purposes, with the realization when the grants go away,
Question
staff
5.
you hire may also go away.
What are your thoughts on the current
So he's
and
applying
the
those to
proposed budget for your school
facilities
district?
and
And how would you
other
determine your
issues that
budget
rest within the
priorities?
district.
Greg, why don't I let you continue?
Well, again, budgets are tough, but I think the priorities mainly
Thoughts
have
on
to
the
do
current
with
and the
what takes
proposed
place
budget
in
for
the
your school
classroom and the
district?
support that we can
And
give to
how
our
would you determine
educators
your
and
budget
ultimately the
priorities?
students in the district.
Greg, why don't I let you continue?
One of the reasons budgets are getting tough is, well, again, budgets are tough, but I think the priority is family informed what takes place in the classroom. Many districts around the state, educators, and will spend well above in the district mandatory minimum for that. One of the reasons budgeting has been tough is it's difficult in a town like there, 7 or 8%, where the median income for some districts are 10 or 20% high. Winchendon, many districts around the state are 2%. Will spend well above the mandatory minimum and overrides are community set by the state. So we have to use our money wisely. I know in Athol, they're 7 or 8%, and that has to go to the classroom. Some districts are 10 or 20% to pay the teachers that are in that classroom. We're at about 1 or 2%. We also need materials support. So it's, anybody that thinks that rights are not balancing and is juggling, we have to use our money wisely, is easy, and it's easy to set every priority classroom. Some of that, of course, has to go to pay the teachers that are in the classroom. We do the best we can, also we try to materials sure that our students always see anybody that thinks that they're balancing the juggling school district budget is easy, and that it's easy to set every priority is wrong, quite frankly. We do the best we can, and we try to make sure that our students are receiving the education that they deserve with the best educators.
School district and how to determine your budget priorities. Number 5. Alicia.
Just quite simply,
personally, I think looking at the school improvement plans and seeing where the schools are, and then,
We are on,
and
what are your thoughts on
if it's
the
just
current
one
and
school or if it's an
proposed
entire district, I
budget for
think
your
looking
school
at
district
that
and how you define your budget
closely,
priorities.
and much like what Craig said, allocating the money to the teachers into the buildings and to,
Quite simply, I think
looking at the school
the
improvement
students
plans
who are
and seeing
in
where
those
the schools
buildings,
are,
because I think
and
that,
then,
I think currently the focus is just one school, or if it's an entire
because
district,
it's
it's
looking
looking
at
at
that,
setting the
foundation
closely,
to provide,
and much like
just
what
stronger
kind of Greg
group of
said,
students to
allocating
continue
the money to the
throughout
teachers
the
into the
winter
buildings
learning
and to,
So I think
the
using that
the
raw
students who are
data
in
is
those
definitely
buildings,
helpful.
because I think that,
And
I
commend
think currently the
Mr.
focus
King for
is
using the elementary schools
because
it's
kind
kind
of
of
setting
setting
the
because it is
foundation
difficult to hire
to
teachers.
provide,
I don't
just
think,
a
I think for a
stronger
couple of
kind
positions at
of
the
group
Winchton
of
Public
students
School
to
system,
continue to move
throughout the Winchton Public School system.
applies.
So I think using that raw data is definitely
so,
helpful. Commend him on that,
and
but
I
overall commend
commend
data.
Mr. King for using the money from grants for infrastructure, because it is
And
difficult
Kevin.
to hire teachers. I mean, I
So
don't
I need to
think,
take a
I
deeper
think for a
dive
couple of
into
positions
both
in the
budgets,
Winchton Public
but
School
even
system,
simply based on the budget
people
meeting a
didn't
few weeks
necessarily
ago, that I
apply to
attended,
some of
I'm
the
very
positions that were
optimistic about
actually
how the
needed, so
superintendent has got
commend
a
him on
better
that,
handle on
but
the budget.
overall, data.
Sounds like it was pretty scary in the past. And through his vision and creativity, Murdoch
So I
Trust
need to
Money
take a deeper dive into
towards
both
activities,
budgets,
but even
and
simply
two,
based on the budget meeting,
new
new
teachers
teachers
being
being
hired.
hired, I'm very optimistic. He's got a plan in
about
place
how
to
the
sustain those
superintendent
positions, gotten a better handle on the budget, I think is important. Sounds like it, and this pretty scary. This brings us again, and through his vision and creativity, you need the ability to vote on monies being used for sports and activities, and panel of 5 members, and new teachers are being hired from, and he's got a plan in place to sustain those positions. Have a spouse, which I think is important in this school system. Brings up again, we need the ability to vote on be able to vote on other parts and 5 members and not have them conflict there. That would be beneficial to the budget, because I think you can determine budget priorities based on needs versus wants, and a closer look at where the successes and failures are. For example, get SGP for math, for them to be able to 4 through 8 vote on other parts from bad in 2019 to not have some conflict there. Pandemic related, I think you can determine budget priorities shows the area on needs versus wants, with a closer look at where the successes and failures are. For example, we going into these green grades went on to the 4 through 8 Department of Elementary, went from bad in 2019 to worse in 2021. Diving in there, pandemic related, I'm sure it was, but it shows an area that needs attention, especially where they're going back into the pandemic. So we going in just even a little surface dive into the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education website, and as you know, started diving in there to see data is important, and so just a brief look at the data. I think focusing on how far we've gone back to the pandemic is very important. So on just even a little surface dive into it, that's where
Question 6,
as Mr.
vocational
said,
schools such as
the
Monty
data
Tech
is important,
are
and
incredible
so in just a
institutions
brief look at
and
the
valuable
data, I
assets
think
to our
focusing
community.
on grades
How
4
would
through
you
8 is
propose
very important.
to bring some of Monty Tech's features and/or programming back to Question 6 and subsequently keep more of our student population schools in-house, such as Monty Tech, are incredible institutions and valuable assets to our
Thank you.
community? How would you
Monty Tech is a
propose
great
to
resource.
bring some of Monty Tech's
People need
features
to understand,
and/or
I mean,
programming
I would love to have more of our students
and
stay
subsequently
in
keep
the
more
Murdoch
of
School
our
District
student
than
population
currently
in-house?
do stay. We have many leaving from Monty Tech each year. Thank you. Part of the problem
Monty Tech is a
is
great
that by
resource.
state law, districts like people need to understand, once your town, I would love to have more of our students to stay in the Murdoch School District. We can't offer them vocational programs. We have many leaving from Monty Tech at Monty Tech each year. They basically have a monopoly. Part of the problem is that by state law, districts like Murdoch, once your town is a member of a vocational school district like Monty Tech, we can't offer, there are also vocational programs that are similar to those, the kinds of advanced placement programs. They basically have a monopoly. We do offer 17 or 18 member school districts. It's tough to compete with what the mayor of Fall River has referred to basically. They're also able to duplicate or expand state-funded prep schools, the kinds of because a lot of the students that need to get into we do offer do well getting vocational training. They're not being accepted. It's tough to compete with admissions. What the mayor of Fall River has referred to basically as schools are state-funded prep schools. Basically, because a lot of the students that need to get into grades, that discipline do well getting vocational absences, they're not being accepted because when they were first the admissions vocational school standards that are set by those states that are working academically inclined are very high. Now, however, they're attracting a number of are academically inclined because they get some practical experience in vocational training that we're not allowed to provide.
Time?
When they were first started vocational schools that were put in place to help those kids that were academically inclined.
I'm going to
Now,
have
however, they're attracting those students
maybe
who are
unpartnered
academically
response,
inclined because they get
okay with the
some
moderator,
practical experience in vocational training that we're not allowed to provide.
Time?
My
I can say
thought
one
is,
thing.
if you have a student who is passionate about a vocation, I'm going to have maybe get into multi-tech, maybe unpopular response. And have all those reasons, and then if okay with the moderator, I'd like to yield my time back to Mr. Vine. I went to an agricultural high school. My thought on agricultural courses, and if you have a student who is passionate about vocation and already offering them, and they can get into multi-tech, those courses here, and have all those resources available. The student has the ability to immerse themselves. I mean, I went to an agricultural high school, and they're going to go on. I wouldn't mind seeing some agricultural courses. I wouldn't want to be doing science, ag mechanics if Monty Tech doesn't already offer them. I wouldn't mind seeing some of those courses here in which
No, that's fine.
a student has the ability to immerse themselves in something that they're passionate about, and they're going to go on
I mean,
and
if
follow that
this is
trade.
possible, I think building relationships with organizations in town to create potential internship opportunities and
All
maybe
about
even
that.
apprenticeships within town.
No, that's fine.
Perhaps that has to take place out of the academic day until you can kind of figure out
Ownership.
how that would actually function and work. I think it's worth exploring. If I can attest to, I think building relationships with organizations in town to create satisfaction to some opportunities, and I have apprenticeship school in town from those opportunities, even because of the tireless work that day until you can kind of figure out how that would actually function and create a lot of the relationships in town exploring. I can attest to continuing and perhaps allowing that satisfaction that certain students potential I have that should be a those opportunities because of the tireless work that but even partnering with other schools to has created a lot of relationships in town and really kind of looking at how you can fostering that meet the needs of the students and where they are allowing that if a student is passionate about a particular skill we should try to provide that and then even adapt the schedule to do that I came from a school where juniors in the morning would take core and in the afternoon they would take their vocational classes. Really kind of looking at how you can so I am meet the needs of the students and where they are. Because if a student is passionate about a particular skill, potential opportunity, we should try to provide that. And then even adapt the schedule to do that. I came from a school where juniors in the morning would take core, in the afternoon they would take their vocational classes and vice versa for the seniors. And so I am familiar with that kind of setup, and so I would be interested in exploring that as a potential opportunity.
Start with Kevin.
I think it's all in how we define these terms. If it's really a bias,
Question
it should be
7.
set aside. It's a preference
How
or a
do
strong
you deal
opinion.
with
It's
personal
about trying to find
preferences
common
and
ground and
biases
reaching a suitable
in
compromise
engaging in a
to reach a
committee
result most
decision-making
beneficial for
process?
the entire district.
Start with Kevin.
But if it's a full-blown conviction, it's all in how we define these terms. If it's really a bias for those convictions, set aside. It's a preference or a strong opinion, and that's why I say we have to find common ground and reach a suitable compromise to reach a result most beneficial for the entire district.
Everyone needs to work together.
If it's a
give and take.
full-blown conviction, an issue of conscience, if we're presented with something, I would stand for those convictions. We may get to it soon, but, and that's why I say we have to unmasking our children. If there's, something that then we have a strong conviction, one needs to work together and give and take. That can't be set aside. But if we're presented with something, take the hands on the ground and say, we may get to it soon, but, masking or unmasking our children. If there's, something that we have a strong conviction on.
In terms of bias or
then,
preference, I think,
that can't be
it's
set
educating
aside.
and understanding what implicit bias is, because if you don't understand what that is, you're never going to make necessarily an informed decision, because implicit, you don't know. It's just something that's second nature because of what has occurred. In terms of bias or preference, I think, it's educating and understanding what implicit bias is. So for me, if you don't understand what that is, take pride in reading and trying to evaluate where my blind spots are. You're never going to make definitely am a person coming from a place of privilege. And I am an employed woman in a community, and I think that even just that alone, for me, I actually really do take pride in reading and trying to evaluate where my blind spots are, especially because I definitely am a person coming from a place of tons of students, and I am an employed woman in a community, and I think that even just that understanding and educating myself provides a certain level of and to not dismiss or intellectualize that someone, especially who is telling me they're going to be tasked with in the community, because we're going to have tons of students who I won't be able to necessarily relate to them or their background, but understanding and educating myself is going to be the first key in doing so. And to not dismiss or intellectualize someone who is telling me their side of the story and just saying,
what Kevin
pull
said
yourself up by
earlier,
the bootstraps.
he's right.
It's not that simple.
In terms of having,
I love this guy.
in terms of having convictions, you have to understand your biases, and you have to understand that you do have them. And you need to understand the difference between a bias and a conviction. Follow on what Kevin said earlier, and I won't go into them. In terms of having convictions, you have to understand your biases, and you have to understand that you do asking, and you need to understand the difference between a bias and a conviction. And there were several times when I went into them in detail, losing input, but I had my own convictions on how to address things. To be expected. You best have to be in the district to lose sometimes. And in terms of biases, you also have to be able to vaccinations, be willing to admit sometimes that you're wrong. There were several times when I came in, and I think that losing in was maturity. I don't know. But that's 40 years ago. To be expected, you have to be willing with a committee to lose. School committees are deliberate in terms of biases. You also have to be able to deliberate. You have to, there's give and take sometimes to be wrong, sometimes to give a little bit. That just comes more mature. I don't know the best possible 40 years ago if I necessarily would have felt that way. But I think that what's popular in many school committees are deliberate. Perfect. Deliberate bodies deliberate. And you have to, there's give and take, and you have to be able sometimes to give a little bit in order to get the best possible outcome.
Public service
What's
means
popular
nearly
men
always
often
having
said,
some
don't
people
let
disagree with
the
you.
perfect
Often
be the enemy
publicly.
of the good.
How will you handle criticism and differences of opinion from both fellow committee members? Question 8. And from the public. And public service means nearly
So
always
public service
having
certainly
some
requires a
people
higher
disagree with
level
you.
of patience and
Often
diplomacy.
publicly.
but
How would
it's
you
really not a whole
handle
lot
criticism
more
and
than we all
differences of
have to deal
opinion
with in our
from
professional
both
lives.
fellow committee members
You know, for instance,
and from the public?
not everybody where I work
Kevin, you can start.
thinks or votes the way I do.
So public service certainly requires a higher
so
level of.
I have to deal with
diplomacy.
colleagues and customers and suppliers.
It's
and,
really not a whole
if your
lot.
biggest customer
more than
calls
we'll
and
have
gives you
to
an
deal with in our
earful,
professional
you
lives.
know, because your truck is 2
for
hours
instance,
late, and not everybody, the driver has a good excuse of why you drive late, but you tell them to go pound sand, well, you could lose your biggest account. I have to deal with colleagues and customers and suppliers. That's just, you know, if your biggest customer calls and gives you an earful, how, you know, because, you know, your truck is 2 hours late, it's really the same with public service. The driver has a good excuse of why the driver is late, but you tell them to go pound sand, watch relationships, well, you could lose your biggest implode, so, it requires patience. That's just, that said, give an analogy, is obligated to entertain disrespect. It's okay to stand up for yourself. It's really the same in public service. I found recently as another doing that. If you don't want to watch relationships implode, you can be called, then it requires patience. You know, nasty or mean. That said, because no one is obligated to entertain disrespect. How dare you disagree with me or stand up for yourself. I found recently that sometimes people like to pile it on, and when you do stand up for yourself, you can be called aggressive. So there's a balance nasty or mean, because I keep coming back to it, but I think patience. Dare you disagree with me, or stand up for yourself. Seen a lot of this, like I said, on social media. You know, sometimes people like to pile it on, sometimes stand up for yourself. Hysterical, other times stupid, troubling. So there's a balance there. You know, but I keep coming back to it. I think patience and diplomacy is key.
Alicia.
Seen a lot of this on social media and.
Gracefully, patiently, and without condescension. That's
Hysterical, other times
what I have to do
stupid,
constantly. I
troubling.
used to be the dean of students.
How
Now I'm an assistant head of school at the Winston School, and I can't tell you how many times I just had people disagree with me. I mean, dean of students really has a lot of
Alicia.
So, I do listen with respect. That is definitely something I've had to
patiently,
over the
without
years that I've been
condescension,
at
which
Winston
that's,
School.
and I hope
What I have
everybody
heard
forgives me
constantly,
the
I used to be the dean of students.
People
Now I'm
disagree
an
with me.
assistant head of school
It's
at
not,
Winston
it's not
School,
foreign.
and I can't tell you how many
Since I've
times
been
I
in
just had people
education,
disagree with me.
for a couple of decades.
And I mean, moreover, I disagree with my family members.
I do listen with respect.
I still
That is
talk to
definitely
them,
something
and I
that's
even love them.
over the years that I've been-
Because we managed to
And I hope
have
parties would give me the same
civil
courtesy.
conversations about our views, even if we
People disagree with
don't
me.
agree.
It's not foreign.
And we
Since
don't
I've
shy
been
away
in
from those
education.
conversations, and sometimes I'll even initiate them.
especially.
And I mean, moreover, I disagree with my family members. I still talk to them, and I even love them. Because we managed to have civil conversations about our views, even if we don't agree.
And Greg.
And
Yeah, I was going to
we
say,
don't
anybody
shy
that
away from those
has grown up in a
conversations, and
family
sometimes I'll
with
even initiate them.
siblings or close cousins,
So,
should grow up knowing that deal with
it's
disagreement.
definitely handling it with grace,
It's
patience,
hard
and without
growing up.
condescension, and
Not
hearing
everybody
the other
agrees on
side, even if you
every
don't agree.
aspect of life or every issue that you're faced with.
And Greg.
Yeah, I was going to say, anybody that has grown up in a family with siblings or close cousins should grow up this country to the other has become that more disagreeable growing up. Not everybody agrees on every adversary of life or every issue that you have faced with enemies. Not just dealing with someone who disagrees with you. In recent years, suddenly the person that you're disagreeing with from one end of this country to the other has become and I think that we need, in a town like Hutchinson, that's so close, adversaries together, we have to have that respect for one another. Enemies. We have to have respect. Not just dealing with someone who disagrees with you. Suddenly, instead of looking at what our national leaders are doing, is follow our own conscience. Don't use models that are out there. Follow what we've been in a town like Winchester, our churches, that's so close, so close together. We have to have that respect for one another. And we have to have respect, a little common decency. Instead of looking at what our national leaders, you don't know where they're coming from. Follow our own conscience. And until you understand the models that are out there, follow what we've been taught. Look at them as our churches, in our families, not the end of us. And I think that's the way I feel about it. Use a little common decency with respect, and have a heart for the people who disagree on a rational where they're coming from.
I'm more than happy to have
And until
that.
you understand where they are coming from, if someone wants to attack you, I just, as another human being, not the enemy, not the other, they have problems. And I think that's the way I feel about it. If people are really become back and approach them at another time and disagree with me on a civility is something that we need to.
I'm more than happy to have that.
If someone wants to attack me, I just say, well, you know, they're either having a bad day or they have problems that are wrong.
Question
It's easier just
9.
to walk away and
In
maybe come
your
back and
opinion,
approach them at another time.
Does our school
but
district have a problem
Civility is something that
when
we need
it
to
comes to
return.
diversity, inclusion, and equity? What should our schools be doing differently in hiring, curriculum, school climate, and working to improve outcomes for children? In your opinion, Kevin, does our school district have a problem when it comes to diversity,
That's a
inclusion, and equity? What should our schools
I
be doing
actually,
differently
so
in hiring,
we should be pushing for
curriculum,
diversity of thought
school
and learning
climate,
opportunities.
and working to improve
I
outcomes
think
for
that's
children?
first and foremost.
Uh,
I decided I want to use my 2 minutes to read you an excerpt of the letter I recently wrote to our director of curriculum, asking for so we should be pushing for diversity of thought and learning opportunities, because we've been using these first and foremost a lot, and I decided I want to use my 2 minutes to read you an excerpt clarification until the DEI letter I recently wrote comes back and gives us some information, asking for clarification on our new DEI task force. So the excerpt from the letter goes, diversity is using just the welcome in our town and our school community. For the record, my family and I drive to church almost 2 hours away in Springfield, Rhode Island, every Sunday. That is about as diverse as the United Nations. We all need to start asking. But realistically, educators and administration have zero control. The excerpt from the letter goes, diversity is a good thing. All town will welcome in our town and our school community as diverse. For the record, my family and I drive to a church almost 2 hours away. If an educator or administrator every Sunday that is about as diverse as the United Nations, same respect and attention. But realistically, educators and administration have. But here lies the real problem of diverse concerned population is. These are, at least strategically, always like to be as diverse as focus on race, gender, and orientation. If an educator or administrator points these things out and treat on how to treat all students with the same respect and attention, that's not equal treatment. Perhaps there's a problem. All students should be treated with the same level of respect for concerned parents. And taught these are, at least intentionally, strategically, regardless of skin colors or religious beliefs on race or who their parents voted for in the last election, with a goal to, if you have things out and differently based on skin tone or a pronoun, that's not equal. You are not really treating them equal. All students should be treated with the same level of respectful treatment and taught with the same level of professionalism, regardless of skin color or religious beliefs, or who their parents voted for in the last election.
Alicia,
If you have to treat a student differently based on skin tone
So I mean, I think
you are not
predominantly
really
white
treating
communities can always improve in
it isn't
DEI.
equal opportunity and equal treatment.
I fully
what we should
support
be aiming
DEI
for.
initiatives.
I think
It's been missing
Thank
far too long. And I think schools should
Alicia.
look at how to recruit and bring a more diverse.
So I mean, I think
population.
predominantly
white communities can always improve in DEI. BIPOC students,
I fully support
the
DEI
LGBTQIA, it's a missing community.
I mean, if you don't see
And,
yourself
I think with the teacher
should look
or
at
administrator, and
how to
you only
recruit
just see
and
kind of
more diverse.
everyone else, you're
populations
not
and
going
teaching
to necessarily
faculty
deal with faculty because you won't
BIPOC
necessarily
students,
be seen.
The LGBTQIA
And I do think identity work is paramount.
I mean, if you
because
don't see yourself,
I need to be able to understand with a teacher
The
or
extra
an administrator, and you only just
added
see
kind of,
experience or weight everyone else.
you're not going to
LGBTQIA
necessarily
person
feel included.
or BIPOC
you won't
student
necessarily
or faculty
be
member.
seen.
And
Deals with
I
on a
do
day-
think identity
day
work
basis,
is paramount because
I don't have
I
that
need
same
to be able to understand
experience. The extra
and even if it's an all-white
added
school, experience
all
or
the white
weight
kids need to know that too.
a
Because it
LGBTQIA
is important
person understand
or BIPOC
where
student
historically
and
and
faculty
currently
member
people
deals with on a
are.
day and
their
day
experience.
basis.
because
if you
don't have
you
that
are
same,
actually providing
experience.
and even if it's an
all-white
less
school, all of the white kids
thoughtful
need to know that too.
and well-rounded education,
Because
it is important to
So,
understand
that is also
where
where
historically
I
and currently people are and their experience. If you don't, you are actually
Folks,
providing
let's keep our applause for the questions.
less thoughtful and well-rounded education to the white kids. So that is ultimately where I stand.
Frankly, I wish that this issue didn't have to be, or wasn't.
Folks, let's
complicated as
keep our applause
sometimes
for the
appears to
and
be.
we're done with the questions. Thanks.
Getting back to what we were talking about earlier, I think the basic issue comes down to respect and teaching respect. Frankly, I wish that this issue didn't have to be or was us, and whatever as complicated as it sometimes appears to be, sexual identity, sexual preference. Getting back to what we were talking about earlier, I think the basic, we have to understand that we live in a world where everybody is different from us. We may share the same skin color, but you are all different from me, from us. You don't share my experience. That may be whether it's. And yet I think we can all find a way to respect each other. I think it's unfortunate skin color that we have to have. We have to understand this in schools that we live in a world where everybody is different from us. We may share the same skin color, but you are all different from me. Place that you don't share my experience. Place all the blame. And yet I think we can all find a way to respect each other. And I think it's most families, parents are working 2 jobs, have to have best that they can that promote this in schools. But we need to, but I think we do have to have there because unfortunately in this district, all too often it's not taking place at home. And this isn't a place I can make the report of parents because the parents are busy. Look into most families, parents are working 2 jobs, they do the best that they can in our community. It does need to be addressed. We need to teach respect for everybody that is find a way to do it that is in this in a manner that brings the community together. I await the report. The entire community can support together to look into this issue, and hopefully they'll come up with some ways that we can better address that in our
Question
community. But
10.
it does need to be addressed.
How will you address the
hopefully
importance
That we can find a
of
way to
improving
do
the
it
integrity
in
of
a manner
academic
that
standards
brings the community
by
together
keeping
and that the
critical
entire
race
community
theory
can support.
and instruction on sexual orientation and sexual identity? Question class 10. How will you address the importance of improving the
Yeah, so when I read
integrity
this
of
question,
academic
I first
standards
just thought, this
by
assumes
keeping
that critical race theory and
and
instruction
instruction on sexual
and identity
orientation and
lacks
sexual
integrity,
identity?
and I maybe I'm misinterpreting it. However, I think just from some of the answers tonight, we can see that you need to teach history.
Yeah, so when I read this
in
question, I
unadulterated
first
lines.
just thought, this
You,
assumes that critical race
I
theory
think,
and instruction on
if done properly and
lacks
appropriately
integrity,
and correct,
and I maybe I'm
history
misinterpreting
class
it.
and health
However,
class.
I think just
at least
some
from my
of the answers
experience.
tonight, we can see
And
that
I personally
you
believe
need
if you
to
don't
teach
teach
history
students
unadulterated
about
lines.
the various groups of people who are,
I think you will never understand
if
where
done
they're coming
properly
from,
and appropriately
nor
and
will you
correct.
be able to be an empathetic
History
individual.
class and health class.
And I think that that's one of the most important
At least
pieces,
from my experience.
And I personally believe if you don't
character
teach
pieces, we can
students about
people.
the various
Not
groups of
just
people
students,
who
I think some adults also could.
you will never
some of that
understand
too,
where
because
they're coming from.
we need to
nor will
equip
you-
and
nor
norm
will you be
our
able to be
students
an
to
empathetic
be educated
individual.
citizens.
And I think that
And
that's
if
one
you
of the
do
most
not
important
understand
pieces.
the entire
population,
we are
character pieces.
we are not meeting the need
people.
or the expectation or the
not just
cornerstone
students,
of
I
a
think-
democracy.
I think
and
some
an
adults
educated
also
public.
could use some of that too, because we need to equip and arm our students to be educated citizens. And if you do not understand the entire population,
So,
we are,
before I get into,
we are not meeting the need
Little
or
paragraph.
the expectation or the cornerstone of
I
a
think the
democracy
problem
and an
with
educated public.
critical race theory is it's just that, it's theory. We need to get back to teaching our kids facts. Now, the fact is, the United States had slavery. The fact is, now, This is actually the basis, the foundation, the pillars. I think the problem with critical race theory is just that.
Are indisputable.
Theory. Racism
We need
is
to get
wrong.
back
To teaching our kids facts.
And the United States,
The fact
started
is,
on a foundation,
the United States
had
had
slavery,
slavery.
as did many
The
countries all
fact
over the
is,
world.
now,
It's not
this
just
is actually
people
the basis,
the
the foundation, the pillars. Slavery has been around since the Hebrews were slaves
are
to the
indisputable
Egyptians.
in the Bible.
Racism is wrong.
So while we have no direct
And the
control
United
over the
States
curriculum,
started
that
on
would be our
foundation
school budget that pays
as
for
the
slavery,
curriculum,
as did many
since
countries all over the
we have
world.
full transparency.
It's not just
and the ability to
political
review new curriculum
and
textbooks.
Black slaves from
It
Africa.
can be,
Slavery
it can't
has
be
been
by
around
the books and find
since
out
the
the
Hebrews
Hebrews
were
were
slaves to
as
the
the
Egyptians.
Egyptians taught us, reach our doorstep.
So while we have no direct control on the
Have the right to
curriculum,
opt
it
in.
will be our school budget
Budget
that pays for the
classes
classes
that are teaching
theory,
theory, and we
or
have
ideology,
transparency and the
those
ability
should
to
be
be
elected.
elected new curriculum and text.
Many will say that the school committee
It
just
can
has
be,
no
it
say in
can't
this
be
regard.
by the books and
We
find out
see
on
on
a
a
national level that parents
as
hold
these
the
school
school
committees
committees
responsible
responsible
for
for
content.
content. It is
In
important.
Western
that
Rhode
parents
Island, it
have
was
the
the
right
right
to
committee
opt
that was
in
sued for failure
their
to
child
address
in
any
classes
classes
that are
content.
teaching theory
So
or
long as our
ideology.
students are struggling
Those
with
should be
math,
elected.
reading,
or college readiness.
many will say that the
We
school
should
committee
be
just
focused
has no
on
say in this
teaching the
regard.
basics.
But
We
we
see on a
found
national level that parents are
not
holding school
theories,
committees responsible
feelings,
for
or
content.
opinions. In Westerly, Rhode
In
Island,
terms of the sexual orientation or the
sued
sexual
for
identity
failure
to address
yes, in health
content.
class,
So long as our
Seventh grade,
students
eighth
are
grade,
struggling with math,
we learned all about that
college
stuff.
readiness,
We
there's
should
different types of
be focused on
relationships,
teaching
and
the
girls
basics.
went one
One
room back
fact,
another
another,
room.
we learn all about our
Not
theory,
theory,
what they do, feelings,
Time.
or opinions. In terms of the sexual orientation or the sexual identity, yes, in health
And
class, seventh grade, eighth grade, we
Critical
learned
race
all about
theory,
that stuff. There's different types of relationships.
quite frankly,
Girls
has-
went
has
one room,
become,
boys went another room, and we learned
my
all about our
opinion,
organs and what
a
they do.
buzzword
Time.
for something that it isn't. Critical race theory was something developed in the
And great.
1970s and developed for the following decades.
Critical race
It's basically
theory,
something that is taught at college level.
quite
At college
frankly,
level courses
has
and
become
graduate level courses. We
in my
don't have a buzzword race theory for some classes and that any other school does. Critical race theory was something developed in the 1970s. And we need to address following decades, and it's basically something that we examine our own at college level courses. I would suggest that in our high school, that our kids be required to race theory classes and so much info, or in any other history of the United States by Henry Steele Commager, and then be required to pick up Howard. We need to address people's history of the United States. Good with bad when we examine our very different views of history. But still, I would suggest that in our high school, that our kids be required to. There's nothing wrong with teaching our children somewhat mythical that many of the founding documents of the United States by Henry Steele Commager, and then be required to pick up Howard racism. All men were created in the United States. Two very different views actually lived by. But still, both our children deserve to know that the Constitution, there's nothing wrong with teaching our children as 3/5 that many of the founding documents, not a full person, were written, and that from many policies that all men were created equal is a great phrase. Post-World War II, few of our founding fathers actually lived by that phrase. Whether it's redlining, our children deserve to know that the Constitution originally, those are realities. It wasn't until this, not a full person. It wasn't until this year that Congress actually passed into law and anti-lynching in post-World War II, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's just amazing. Whether it's redlining
Time.
for housing, loans, but those are realities. It wasn't until this,
Question.
it wasn't until this year that Congress actually passed into law an anti-lynching law, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's just amazing.
And input from more
But-
time with important upcoming
I'll stop.
decisions. Kevin,
I think it starts with communication,
Question
including
11.
social media,
in what ways
transparency,
can school
including a more
committee
detailed
increase
agenda. And I
engagement,
don't know
morale, and
if elected, will
input
obviously
from
go
more
through training
residents
and learn
with
how much of
important
the agenda you
upcoming
can actually
committee
put out there,
decisions?
because I don't know what that
Kevin,
Constitutes a quorum because the other members.
I think it starts with communication, as much detail as possible media about the agenda,
Transparency,
transparency,
including a more detailed agenda.
And I don't know meetings can be over an
If
hour
elected,
long.
I'll obviously go through
And,
training on how
I've been
much
trying to make it
the
to
agenda
most of
is
them.
actually put out there.
And sometimes the agenda seems a little vague,
because the other members can read it, but,
and
I
as
know
much
part of
detail
that
as possible
probably
has to be
about the
agenda, so
certain
people know what to
aspects,
get excited
but
about.
I know
There was
gonna
one thing that carried over from the meetings, can be
about
meeting
an hour
frequency.
long.
And I had a guess, I've been trying to make it to most of them, and sometimes the agenda seems a little vague, but, and I know, it was one of those that, what does that even mean? It has to be, what are they gonna talk about, what are they gonna vote on? But I know, so was one thing that if there can be any more transparency, meeting free details of the agenda, that would be great. I had a guess about that. Maybe carving out some time, I wanted to address the committee at one point, but the public comment could only be, it was one regarding something, what does that even mean specific agenda? What are they gonna talk about? What are they gonna vote on? Carving out time, so where the public can, if there can be any more, transparency, a short amount of time, address the committee as to what they would like to see on the agenda. Maybe carving out some time down. I wanted to address the committee at one point and found out that public comment could only be regarding something that was on a specific agenda that night.
Yeah,
Maybe
my
carving out
committee
time
chairman might shoot
for
for
public
saying this,
comment,
but
and just,
anybody that's out there that has a
short amount of
concern
time,
they want to
address the
bring before
committee
the
as to what
committee,
they would like to see.
can contact us. We all have our
Concerning them,
public emails
I think,
um, via the school committee, and if there's something you would like us to put on the agenda,
Greg?
we can forward. Yeah, my committee chairman might shoot me for saying this, but anybody that's out there that has a concern they want to bring before. I will say that one of the advantages I found in contact is we all have our, I almost hated to see us go back to in-person meetings because I knew that once we start something you would like us to put on the agenda. The public participation was going to drop off incredibly, and it has. It can be put on. When we were doing the Zoom meetings, during COVID. I will say that one of the advantages I found 30 or 40 parents at least, I almost hated to see us go back to taking part in, at least having a chance that once we started, committee was up back to the I do know that they've been looking at public participation, possibly going to drop off, some sort of hybrid meetings. When we were doing the Zoom meetings, having us meet during publicly at town hall, we would be getting 30 or 40 parents at least, or folks around zooming in and taking from part, at least having a chance to see what the school committee was. Parents are busy, they may not have time. I do know that they've been looking at school committee meeting, possibly from 6, developing some sort of hybrid meeting, 7:30, 8 o'clock, having us meet publicly at town hall and still having the ability social media around town to zoom in from home, because I don't use it a lot. My parents are busy, they may not have time to go to a school committee meeting that lasts from 6 until 7:30, 8 o'clock, sometimes if we're lucky, depending on what these are too often. But communicating social media, there are other options via the school. Just because I don't use it a lot on purpose, and there are other options via the school district website where people can see what's going on in the district in different classes.
I
There are
agree. I
some
think
things that
just-
we can do, but.
I think encouraging people to show up
I
and
would just
explaining why it is important.
Anybody that has a few minutes,
not
even if you
just
stop in for
because
15 minutes
it
at
could
one of
be
our
their
school
child,
meetings to do something, let us know you're
or
interested.
maybe their spouse who is in the school system, but I mean, it's your tax dollars, and to understand how that's
I
being
agree.
used
I
and
think
why,
just,
I think is,
I think encouraging people to show up and explaining why it is important. And then also,
not just
dissemination of
because it
information
could
in
be their
various
child.
kind of ways.
Or
I mean, I
maybe their
joined
spouse
Bookface,
is in
I
the
know
school
it's Facebook,
system,
but I mean, it's your tax
Take that
dollars.
joke and-
Only because of this office that I'm running for. But
I think
I understand and I see the validity and the popularity in it.
And then also,
Because I know not everyone has the same access necessarily to join Bookface, Wi-Fi, internet. So I think offering, only because of this office that I'm running for. But I understand and I see the validity and the popularity in it. And because I know not everyone has maybe even the same access necessarily to here and there on Zoom to Wi-Fi, internet. So I think offering would be the information, whether it's in hard copy, I mean, can go pick it up, or actually mailing it and engaging in to know what is going on. Conversations and who knows? I mean, that's what Greg said. Maybe even offering a couple of meetings here and there on Zoom to encourage people to attend and participate would be a key to that.
If there is an increase in
and,
the
I mean,
rate in the
just-
future,
encouraging
What is
and
your
engaging
stance
in
on the school district mandating
conversations that are contentious. So
wear
that's
masks?
ultimately what I would try to do.
Greg, you can start.
I would take a look at what the
Question 12.
public health statistics
If there
show
is
us.
an increase
I
of
would
COVID in the
Take a look
future,
at what guidance we're
what is
getting
your
from
stance
CDC
on the
and
school
from DESE.
district
And I would make
mandating
my decision from
students
there,
to
but I
wear
certainly,
masks
if it looked
again?
serious enough, I would not shy
Greg,
away
sorry.
from requiring masks.
Again, take a look at what the,
It was a lot of popular vote statistics show us that we took earlier this
take a
year
look at
to
what
extend the
guidance
mask
we're
mandate
getting
from the CDC.
but it was something I felt strongly about,
And I would make my
bring
decision
kids
from
in the
there, but I
district
certainly, if it looked serious enough, I would not shy away.
It wasn't
from
just
for
for
them, the school district. At that time had responsibility, not a popular vote of every child that we took earlier this year to extend the mask mandate. I frankly, for myself, was something I felt that nine kids in the district and supporting the mask mandate. It wasn't just for them, the school district responsible. At that time had responsibility. So depending on what health and well-being of every child, statistics say, and what the trends are like, and the information I've read from myself, professionals that Facebook supporting the mask mandate, and Twitter posts, then I would make my decision, but if I had to, yeah, I would. So depending on what the statistics say,
Comes along,
professionals,
all of a
not
sudden
from
we've got,
Facebook,
reemergence of
posts,
smallpox,
or
Tons of
Twitter
conversations.
posts,
COVID,
then I would make my decision.
same
If I had to,
goes,
yeah, I would.
fool me
support it.
once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Kevin,
Now, so if it's something new comes along, serious divide in, reemergence of where people get their information, then it's a conversation. That's for sure. For COVID, no. Those who differ with fool me once, shame on the narrative on masks, shame on narrative on the vaccine are, doesn't mean we're just getting our information. Serious divide in where doctors who came out, that's for example, but on this topic. Those who doctors that came out and said, what they were having great results using hydroxychloroquine early in infection. Doesn't mean we're just getting our information. CNN said hydroxychloroquine, that stuff will literally. There are doctors who came out, and perfect example, people looked at chloroquine and all the doctors that came out and said, do you know, and you were having great results using hydroxychloroquine, make clean stuff out of the air. The World Health Organization considers hydroxychloroquine most essential global medicines. And it's been prescribed over 1 billion times to treat other illnesses. Do you know, and Dr. Fauci himself actually wrote on its benefits with other respiratory issues. The World Health Organization considers hydroxychloroquine unpopular, one of the most essential global medicines. All of a sudden, it's been used, it's been prescribed over 1 billion times. A lot of lives could treat other illnesses. Ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Dr. Fauci himself actually, in terms of masks for COVID, no, respiratory is similar to H1N1, but the minute CDC now someone unpopular seasonal mentioned possibly using it, and all of a sudden it was, okay, that's snake oil, stay away from that. A lot of lives could have been saved using ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. So in terms of masks for
If
COVID,
a situation came up where there were recommendations
the CDC now considers
based in
a regular
science,
seasonal
and
human
I would
flu.
say reputable,
And-
legitimate science.
Okay.
And also the Department of Education and CDC and World Health Organization. If that, and the administration, if that situation came up where there were recommendations, I mean, at the Winchendon Space Needs has a few people I would say reputable, legitimate science.
Came down with COVID, and it was like a
also
handful
the
of
Department of
adults.
Education.
And so
and,
for this last
CDC,
we,
and World Health Organization,
inside, we are
if
masked.
that,
So
and the
I would
administration, if
definitely
that was a
support that,
recommendation
because
to go back to
I
masks, I
want
would
to
ensure
ensure
that the
that
faculty and families, who actually,
came down with COVID.
no, it was like a handful of adults. And so I would want to ensure the safety of the students, faculty, and families inside.
We
are,
I want to ensure that the students, faculty, and families
would take everyone into consideration.
I'm sorry.
No, okay. I would want to ensure the safety of the students, faculty, and families
Question 13.
are at I do think that some people
programs
are
for
more
special
susceptible than others,
education
and I
students,
think we need to take
English
everyone
language
into
learners, or
consideration.
ELL, and gifted students. Kevin, you can start.
Okay, well, the program I can speak to most
Question
effectively
13.
would be special education.
What are your
to little
thoughts
children
on
on the
school
autism
district's
spectrum.
programs for
And
special
while I've had
education
conversations with
students,
some people
English
that knew I was
language
running for school
learners,
committee,
or
who have not
ELL,
had
and
the best
gifted students?
experiences with special
Kevin, you can
education
start.
here.
Okay.
As a family, the program I can speak to most effectively would be special education for our two little children, certainly leaps and bounds. And while I've had conversations with some people, I was running in our former district, was not Massachusetts, had the best experience. I mentioned that to one person. As a family, we could have great cooperation for connection with the special ed department for our church, New Hampshire. And leaps and bounds. This is 1,000 times better than Webster is. Webster is our former district in southern Massachusetts. So, I mentioned that. I mean, we can only go with what our experiences are. We live in Webster or Connecticut. My wife has said, good, we quite a leap what are New Hampshire teachers. And I said, oh, well, this has got 1,000 times better than Webster. Webster just so my son's, I mean, we can only go with what our experiences are. My experience, and I know my wife gives a shout out to interaction. Mrs. Pendicio, teachers, who my wife says has been amazing. We've got I'm at work all day, so I have to be honest. My wife does a lot of communicating with teachers and the notes. My son's speech and language teacher for Ms. Gannon has been great. And I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Pendicio, who my wife says has been amazing. I'm at work all
Yeah, I
day,
wish
so I got
that I could speak a little bit more from experience the emails with these programs, but I wish I understood them a little bit better than perhaps I do, and perhaps I should. I go by what,
And Greg.
I go by the input that I get from parents. That I could speak a little bit more from experience with these programs. So I wish I understood them a little bit better than perhaps I do, and perhaps I few and far between. And so I have to, I go by what I only assume from that. I go by the input that I get from parents. Something's going wrong, you're always going to hear complaints that I get as a school committee member. And regarding any of those three very rare experience in all the years that I've been on the school committee. And so I have to, I can only assume from that we're doing pretty well because special ed, when something's going wrong, you're always going to hear from students' programs. And again, we can always do better. I assume that's been a very rare experience in all the years that I've been on right now in special ed or ELL or the gifted students programs.
And Alicia.
Again, we
So
could
I think
always do
English
better, I
language
assume.
learners for the Wichita Public Schools, that's a tough one because it just fluctuates so much within a year and year to year. And to really, I think, measure and have hard results would be difficult. However, I do think that the Wichita Public School is doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. So I think and faculty who are in for the Wichita Public Schools, that's a tough one because it just fluctuates so much within a year and year to year. And so in terms of special education, measure, I just have agree. I do think that the needs are met. I do think that when the students is doing the best, I think that always using they have data and faculty at are in building performance in the district is something that can be utilized and to actually fill 3 categories. And so in terms of special education, curriculum or just the student population are for APs for the students in college. I think that always using not necessarily and looking at improving dual enrollment is something that is offered something that state utilizing, like I said, 3 categories challenge. And in terms of like And, or again, I think the student population with all the buildings, so they're not just three separate or just several separate buildings or silos. Not necessarily using the term gifted, standardizing best practices to help the transition from elementary, middle to high school, which is great. Is going to definitely be able to maintain and reinforce a certain level and standard across again, I think the school system. Collaborating with and aligning the curriculum standards to help or just several separate buildings or silos is essential. I think standardizing best practices to help with the transition from elementary, middle to high school is going to definitely be able to maintain and reinforce a certain level and standard while the school systems are doing and aligning the curriculum and standards to help students meet those high expectations, I think is essential. And I think that that's something that the Michigan Public School System is also looking to improve and evaluate. So I think that while they are doing well, I think in almost any school you can always improve.
Where to start? I'm not sure specifically what they're looking for, but
in what school district
less than a year
or
after
community
graduating
activities and
from our
organizations
regional high school,
have you been involved?
at the age of 18, I ran for and was elected selectman in Westminster. And so I turned there before moving on to where I started. I'm not sure specifically what they're looking for. I'd like to think that eventually coming to Winchendon in the 90s, less than a year after graduating Oakmont Regional High School, as the news director at the radio station, I occupied as selectman in Westminster, Spring and Central Street over there before moving on. Was being active in a career in the broadcasting meetings. I'd like to think that in the morning, eventually coming to Winchendon in the 90s. In the past few years, I've been served on the cultural council, as the news director at the radio station, as communication committee of Spring and Central Street over here. Members of, it was being changed the name, I had to attend the Eagle Side Committee to do reports, first news reports. But other than that, and in the past few years, I've been served on the Cultural Council, Planning Board, the Town's Communication Committee. Would like to think I was one of the original members of, I know they've changed the name, as part of the Ingleside Committee in the school when it was first formed. I have to say, no, I haven't been. And again, having been on the school committee from certainly about 2002 and again from 2015 to the present, would like to think I've been fairly active in.
I get this question a lot online, and it's usually
as far as any
very
organizations.
so we haven't lived here very long, so
I have to say, no, I haven't
really
been
personally, that's kind of a gotcha question.
certainly involved in the community in a number.
My answer is really simple. As a father of four, I know a lot can happen in 9 months, but 9 months is actually longer. I get this question a lot online, and it's usually so people that are deciding to run for a school committee that we haven't lived there very long. The first of all, at least for me personally, it's kind of a gotcha question. So my answer is really simple. As a father of four, I know a lot can happen in 9 months.
And I serve on, I'm a member and a representative of the Winchendon School and the Collaborative. And also I'm a member, because I also am a representative through the Winchendon School Steering Committee for Heal Winchendon. I'm also a member of the Rotary Club that meets in Gardner. Also as a representative of and I serve on, I'm a member and a representative of the Winchendon School for Anchor Collaborative. And also I'm a member because I also am a representative through and I think that it has taken a few years for me to kind of step outside of a few of the, I would say the Winchendon School community itself. Those three examples obviously are have ever been on the campus. It's a lifestyle. It's more than a full-time job. So I think teaching, coaching, and being a dorm parent, and then you work weekends. I didn't kind of have a ton of time. Step outside of however, I have definitely figured out itself how to make time for things that are worthwhile and important on the campus. It's a lifestyle. It's more than a full-time job. So teaching, coaching, and being a dorm parent, and then you work weekends. I didn't really have a ton of time. However, I have definitely figured out how to make time for things that are worthwhile and important, and this is one of those things.
We discussed this with Manuel before the event, but we could just lay down some guide our main 14 questions. The question should be your question as a voter should be relevant to how these individuals will serve. I would like to just try to be specific to that. And I didn't even discuss this with you before. It will be a general question that all people candidates for questions will be able to answer. Questions should be your question as a voter on the spot. It should be relevant to how each individual has to serve on the school committee. So that I point specific to that. How many people have a question they like to ask? It will be a general question that all three of the candidates will be able to answer. Okay, so Tamara raised her hand first, so anyone voted in on the spot.
So my name is Tamara Estes.
So, if that's possible. So at that point, how many people have a question they'd like to ask?
But just in regards to Kevin's statement about the diversity, equity, task force, it was
Okay, well, Tamara
put
raised her
together
hand
because
first, so
I
why don't you go
attend
to
school. So my name is Tamara Estes. My daughter, I have fluctuated in, doesn't look like me necessarily because she's mixed. I happen to obviously just like one of the regards to the statement about the community. So I just wanted to let you know, Kevin, that it was task force. It was a situation that happened with my child together because I experienced while she was there attending, where in regards to my daughter, or the guidance counselor rather, doesn't look like me necessarily because I happen to obviously never lived in the minority, and it was in regards to community. So I just wanted to let you know, Kevin, that it was specific to me, a situation that saying my child and what she experienced while she was there attending occurred, that teacher or that guidance counselor. So it was somebody that she cheered with on a regular basis who was very unattainable, and after I found that out, not from regards to and clarifying that with school, that she felt that it would be better for her to live herself rather than have somebody incident occurred that made her have to contact these people. So it was somebody that she cheered with on a regular basis, and she felt very uncomfortable. And after I found that out, let you know that that was merged. Didn't really have anything on it, so that we are all and I just wanted to make sure let you know that that was fine. And it didn't really have anything to do with race, but that everybody matters at that school.
And I agree,
And that felt like
kindness and respect should be shown to everyone.
So I just wanted to clarify that was why. It didn't really have anything related to do with race, so that we are all.
But I just wanted to ask you,
and should be respected and.
when you brought your complaint forward, there's a disciplinary, just
yes.
briefly actually. And I agree, kindness and respect should be shown to everyone, and I said that in the opening comments regardless of skin color or religion or anything else. But I just wanted to ask you,
And I also wanted to clarify.
when you
also
brought your
representing
complaint
Heel
forward,
Winchendon, I've
was
seen you say some pretty negative things
disciplinary action
online
taken
about Heel Winchendon, referencing them being
regarding that
satanic.
counselor?
In the after-school programs that we run.
That is not fair, that is not what I said.
I asked, that's what I saw you say, that it was satanic.
No.
So I'm just, and I also clarified.
You misread the post.
Okay.
What I had posted was something out of North Carolina,
Online about
which
Heel
actually,
Winchendon, referencing them being satanic.
it ended up being a school post, but I found a similar situation in Pennsylvania, because after school safety post. No, and there's someone else misrepresented. What I had posted was something out of North Carolina. So instead of being Heel Winchendon, it would be like having a Hail Satan Club. But I found a similar situation in Pennsylvania, which was a tie-in to Satan Club. The name Heel Winchendon, it was someone else saying that Heel Winchendon about the satanic. Yeah, so, and I said,
Anybody else get that
so
reference?
instead of being Heel
Did you get
Winchendon,
that? Okay.
it would be like having Hail
I
Satan
think we're
Club.
diverging
Correct.
from.
Yeah, I think,
Right,
you know,
which-
things are being taken.
Well,
Which
I
was a
was,
tie-in
and I
to
also
the
clarify
name
that
Heel
there
Winchendon.
won't be a
It
school
was
committee
not
member
saying
to
that
talk
Heel
about
Winchendon
school
is
action.
satanic. So.
I'm just confused. Did you get that?
I think we're diverging from.
Yeah, I think, you know, things are being taken.
Well, I was, and if I could just also
Well, again, I would invite everyone to go
Are going
back
to be a
and
school
look at
committee
that
member,
post, if
maybe
it's still
I would
visible.
invite you to come to the after-school program so you can see what we do. We do not hand out knives to children.
Such as what?
As
What
Mark
programs
Conley,
are we
the
doing?
after-school
Okay,
program.
well, you keep bringing up Mark Conley. I am not Mark Conley. Mark Conley
No, I'm done.
has
Thank you.
publicly made his objections and his concerns. Again, I would invite everyone to go back and look at that. I cannot be responsible.
I would invite you to
for
come to the
responsibility
after-school program.
for other people's
We do
comments
not hand
about
out
their
knives to
relationship.
children.
I made a reference that was similar in name. We are bringing up Mark Conley. I am not Mark Conley. All
Thank you,
made
clarified that.
his objections and his concerns, and I feel what you didn't know.
That was
I
refreshing.
cannot be responsible for my
So,
other people's comments
I have
about
a
their
few
election.
questions.
I
Hi,
made
my
a
name is
reference
Kayla.
that was similar in name. We already got Phil mentioned in doing all
And
these
with
things.
the way that the economy
That's
is
where it
going,
came from.
a lot of different people from diverse backgrounds
Thank you.
moving into the smaller
That
towns.
was refreshing.
And that's just the way that.
So,
So we're gonna have a more diverse population. I have a children. More diverse population. Hi, my name is Kayla. I think it's really important to be informed about all of the parents and all of the children. And with the way that the economy is moving. So that being said, a lot of different don't think that people should be educated on and that's just the way that. So I just want to ask. So we're going to have more trained on that. Children, people already have the background. It's really important to be informed about that all of the parents and all of the children to deal with people from all different races, backgrounds. So that being said, I heard you say that you don't think that people should be educated. So my question would be if each of the, so I just want to ask board members, because if you don't think people need to be trained on that, they can apply that people already have the background and the information they need. That to be that's important to me to have to deal with people from all different races, backgrounds. It happens to my child who is mixed race, and it's happened to my nieces and nephews. So my question would be if each of the great example board members or candidates who candidates would like to find a microaggression based on the program starting all the time. Wait, that was this last. That's important to me. So I think a lot of work does need in the workplace. So that's why I use it as a child example. It's very extreme, and I really haven't known that these candidates who I'm living and voting for, and who great examples of that my niece will be able to defend the right to advocate for choice based on the program for all people. If you could please define this last question. So I think a lot of work does need that. You don't need that. So that's why I use it as a personal example. It's very recent, and I really
My
want to know
understanding of what
that
you just referenced, I wouldn't call that microaggression in my understanding of microaggression. I would call it a slur.
Well, I
And it is
wasn't saying that that was a
disrespectful.
microaggression. I was saying that this is something that has to be defined in my work. Doesn't need it done in the community.
well-
That way I know that you don't need that. There was separate.
Okay. Well, slurs are unacceptable. My understanding of microaggressions, I wouldn't call that
In my understanding,
microaggression. In my understanding
is
of microaggression.
a
I would call
term
that a slur.
that
Well, I
also
it is
wasn't saying that that was a
disrespectful.
microaggression. I
Everyone
was saying
needs
that
safety.
this is something that happened
It's a
recently, so
liberal
work
term
doesn't need to be done.
that
If you say something disagreeable,
There was
that's a
separate.
microaggression.
we need to have.
Slurs are unacceptable.
So,
It has,
microaggressions,
in my opinion,
my
microaggressions have
understanding
nothing to do with racial
is
slurs,
a
treating
term
people with respect, or
also
kindness.
came out at the
And I think
same
that
time.
everyone needed
In terms of
safety.
DEI, my
It's a
letter
liberal term
to Dr.
that
Landon.
if you say something disagreeable,
kind of
that's
diversity,
microaggression.
do they think
We
we
need
need
to have a problem with it.
So,
It has a very, in my
in my
opinion,
letter, and I'm gonna
microaggressions have
page,
nothing to do with
that
racial
full
slurs,
letter
or treating
and his
people with
response
respect or kindness.
so I've made that clear.
So-
In terms of DEI,
Here's where
my
I stand.
letter to Dr.
I
Landon
don't
was to
feel,
get
I
clarification,
feel
what kind of diversity
You know,
do they
why
think
do
there's
we
a
need problem with?
There's
You
an
know, I
intense
was very clear in my
training
letter,
how to treat
and on my
people
Facebook
equally,
page, and with
that
respect
full
and
letter and
kindness.
his response.
It's quite simple.
Treat
So-
everybody equally
So-
and with respect.
Here's
and
where
with
I stand.
kindness.
I
Stop
don't focusing
focusing
on race.
Stop focusing on someone's gender identity.
Why do we
Just
need
go in there and
this
treat
everybody
intense
with
training on
respect
how to treat
and
people
kindness?
equally and
That-
with
that's-
respect and
Can
kindness.
I just interject?
It's
I would
quite
love to
simple.
just be able to
Treat
give some
everybody
information
equally
and answer
and with
questions.
respect and
for
with
a second.
kindness.
Please do.
So,
Stop focusing
a
on race.
microaggression
Stop
first.
focusing on someone's gender
For
identity.
example,
Just
I
go
would
in there
say
and treat
if a
everybody with
teacher or a
respect
student went up
and
to a
kindness.
BIPOC student and was
That-
like,
that's-
oh my God, your hair is
Can
so
I just
beautiful.
interject?
It's-
I would love
so
to
take when I touch it. And it's
and answer the
almost,
question.
it's just kind of marginalizing that person
So,
and their features.
A microaggression
If I'm
first,
wrong, please correct me, but that is one
for example, I would
thank
say
you.
if a
I am not above
teacher
more
or a
training,
student went up
because
to a
again,
BIPOC student was
I think
like,
it
oh
is
my God, your hair is so beautiful,
that
it's
occurs.
like so thick when I
And,
touch it. And
because
it's almost,
it's just kind of marginalizing
think
that
that-
person and their features. If I am wrong, please
I
correct
think
me, but that
students
is one
need to
example.
understand
Okay,
that
thank you. I am not above more training. Because,
identity matters.
again, being
I think
seen
it
matters.
is
That
as a
occurs.
student or
And,
even just an employee, a
because
person in the community. I have never
once
think
had
that-
to worry about when I walk into a room, people staring at me because I'm white.
I think students need
And
to
I think
understand
that in and of itself is one indicator. Identity matters. Being seen matters. And I think our
me,
students,
as a student or even
regardless,
just an
need to
employee,
understand
a person
that
in the community.
there
I
is
have
an
never
added
once had to
look
worry about when I walk
or
into a
a
room,
different
people staring at me
treatment.
because
Yes,
I'm white. I agree, Kevin. People
And I
should be
think
treated
just
with respect.
in and of-
But
that
because of
in and of
implicit
itself
bias,
is one indicator you may not be aware of. That doesn't have indicator. And I think our students that when a BIPOC person need to understand walks into a room, there is an added look, there is or a different treatment. Yes, maybe not always, but it does occur. But because of the implicit bias that you may not be aware of, that doesn't happen. Understanding why. And understanding that when a BIPOC person of why walks into a room, so I don't necessarily want to continue. I could talk about this much maybe longer, not always, but it does occur. Or store it up for another question. And so the majority of the time. And understanding why needs and the discussion of why needs to take place. So I don't necessarily want to continue. I could talk about this much longer, but I'll give some time to Greg or open it up for another question.
Well, I think let's give Greg some chance.
For whatever reason, the kids, many kids, I'm not gonna say the kids. I wanna say that the universal children out there. This is one of those situations where I believe that some children unfortunately are not getting these lessons we do have to have. They hear mom and dad screaming at the TV. For whatever reason, at night, the kids, many kids, they hear comments thrown around at the dinner table sometimes regarding those people. But many children unfortunately are not getting. The kids have to learn somewhere at home. They hear mom and dad screaming at the TV, watching the news, wherever. That everybody, they hear comments thrown around at the dinner table sometimes regarding those people. I think it's important that we have these programs in our schools. The kids have to learn somewhere. That message has to come from some school, church. Now parents, obviously, are the greatest influencers on children. Everybody, there's only so much the school deserving a church tax and so forth can do. I think it's important. That doesn't mean we give up on it. Doesn't mean we give up on our children. The teaching message to have the respect has to come from somewhere. Now, parents, as long as I'm the greatest influencers on children, and there's only so much the schools and the churches. That's, frankly, that's one of the reasons that we're looking at consolidation for Joytown, like the other two schools, most likely. I'll start up at Murdoch at some point. And let me tell you, that's one of the reasons, because frankly, that's budget. Right now, that's okay because of the ESSER grants. We're looking things at consolidation going. Quite frankly, because of the budgets that we're giving the other two schools, most likely because of the fact that we can't have Murdoch at town where family income is. Not frankly, our budget, right now we're doing okay because of the ESSER grants. We have some things on. There isn't a lot more we can ask from the, quite frankly, because the budget passed, we've tried it each year. One, because of the fact that we can't ask a lot of the town, but most others have where we've had to come up with money to fix all the schools and keep them repaired. I think that our facilities handle that and does the best they can. There isn't a lot more that we can ask from the community. We've tried, much as I have to say, as hard as we work, it takes money has succeeded. And we need the support of the town against others that have failed. We'd love to come up with money to fix all the schools and keep them repaired. Our facilities management does the best they can. If you have suggestions, but I'm more than happy, as much as I hate to say, listen to what they are. As hard as we work, it takes money public, so. And we need to see know the town again, Mr. King, and let him know as well. And if there's a problem with the schools in the let us know what the problem is in your child's classroom. If you have suggestions, I'm more than happy to, because it's so listen to what they are. It's hard to answer. My email is public, so general problem, you know, and call Mr. King and let him know as well. And if there's a problem, let us know. Okay, so you're talking about classes in your child's classroom, what's falling apart, what's the problem?
There's no room for them to move.
Because until that comes to us, it's hard to
I volunteer in the
answer.
classroom on a regular basis.
It's general
and there's
problem
very
without
little
going
room
specific.
For the students to be able to move around, so
It's
that
the number of
really is
students in the size.
cramming them into a space that doesn't fit.
So you're just talking, okay, so you're talking about class, yeah, well, you know, that school was originally
Infrastructure
designed to be
size of
high
space.
school. Yeah.
So there's no room for them to move. There's barely room for the teachers to do. I volunteer in the classroom on a regular basis, and there's very little room for the students to be able to move around.
Would you like to
So
respond to
that
that?
really is cramming them into a space that doesn't fit for them when we have other spaces available.
Yeah, well, you know, that,
I mean,
that
if you
school was
can,
originally designed to be.
yes, getting more volunteer support,
and,
because
I-
a teacher
I
having to
think
manage
consolidation is
24 students at any level is difficult. I have had to teach a class that big before. And even with strong classroom management, it has its challenges.
Yes,
So
getting
I
more,
think volunteer support, because
working
the
with
teacher
parents who
having
want
to manage
to help and support.
24 students at any level is difficult.
then
Also,
also,
I have had to teach a class that big
if there
before.
are opportunities in the budget to
And even
try
with strong classroom
aides and
management,
assistants still has its
or even just
challenges.
another teacher.
So
I think
to try to reduce that
working
class
with
size
parents who
and
want to be there to
really
help
taking a
support.
creative look at the
spaces
spaces
that are
and then also
within the Winchendon Public School system.
if
There are
I
opportunities
personally
in the
do not
budget
know if there
to
is this
try
untapped
to
through a resource that could be
aides and
used,
assistants,
or
if
or
there
even
is
just
not,
another
taking
taking opportunities
to try to
creatively
reduce that
throughout the day
class
to get
size
kids
and
to
move
really
throughout
taking
the
a
building.
creative look
Whether
at
it's
if
spaces
there's a
that
free period
are
in the gym, go.
within the Winchendon Public School system.
Not
I mean,
I personally do not know if
but
there
taking
is this
opportunities
untapped
where
room or resource
they,
that could be used,
or available.
if there is
And,
not, taking
trying to think outside the box,
opportunities because creatively
the
throughout the day to
old
get
way
kids to
of
move
educating
throughout the building.
whether
not,
it's
but
there are different
taking
needs,
opportunities
there are
where
different,
they
expectations, there are different skills
are available.
and
Yes,
there are some that are still from the old school way of thinking. However,
the old way of educating
if we don't
is not necessarily, or it's not, it's not the way that we should be educating. There are different needs,
So
there
I
are different
apologize.
expectations,
I
there are
don't know all
different
the
skills.
problems in this
Yes, there are some that are still from the old school way of thinking, however,
And he comes
I,
home, he's
if
excited,
we
he
don't
doesn't
learn
tell
from
me,
the past,
it's
you're
like
never going
starting
to improve for
again.
the future,
And
so.
when we go for, parent-teacher conferences, and I don't have all the solutions, my son actually goes to Southern Element. And he comes home, he's excited, he doesn't tell me to address it as when we go for, parent-teacher conference, reach out, communicate with them. That one time, I think, my understanding of you or what you said was, it's not loaded with kids. That was more of a space issue, and not necessarily we need to add more people to that mix. The way you address it is, it didn't sound like you were thinking we need more aides or reach out to communicate with the kids need more space. My understanding of you or what you said was, so again, there was just more of a space issue coming along now. Necessarily, we need to add more people to that mix. So it didn't sound like you were the kind of needing more aides or assistants. The kids need more space. Kids are packed in there that tight, and so again, they're learning. This is just probably their health. That coming along now for me. Then that's certainly something that needs to become a priority. Well, that's the kind of things that should be addressed. It's probably their health. We got any
And one of the challenges
then
that
that's
the
really
youth
something
directly
that
have told me about is their safety within the school. There's lots of LGBTQ youth who feel like they're scared to go to school, that there have been fights where they have been physically assaulted, where they don't feel like they can use one of the challenges that the youth certainly have told me about were mentors are coming down schools. And how of everything needs to learn in that kind of environment where they're scared to go to school, scared that there have been well-being or unable to show up as your authentic self. Can you tell me this or through what you have done or like how on top of everything support those to learn to show up every day when you're physically fit because that's for your well-being or unable to show up as your authentic self and all the change
Okay,
you are.
Alicia, why don't you start?
So, can you tell me this is sort of
I mean, first, I think that is not uncommon across the country, which is unfortunate.
Show up every
And I
day.
think if we actually did respect everyone, that would be the case, but that's not the world we live in. And from my experience at the Winchendon School, I have worked with students who came to our school. I think that is not uncommon, identifying as they were biologically assigned. And I think if we actually did respect everyone, that would be the case, but that were in a situation where they didn't feel necessarily confident or safe. I have worked with, they were just overly very anxious and came to our school,
having to be able to have a
And
conversation
we're
with their
identifying
parent.
as
And this
they
was
were
all
biologically
just the
assigned,
student making
but then
these
started
choices.
to
There was
transition,
nothing in
and
terms of
they, an
were
adult,
in
trying
a
to,
situation where
and
they
unfortunately,
didn't
this
feel
doesn't
necessarily
turn around.
confident or
Them
safe to choosing.
they were just overly
I
very
wake up every
anxious,
day and
and I am who I
having to be able to
am,
have a conversation with
and
their
I
parent.
did
And
not
this was all
necessarily
just the student making these
choose
choices. There
to
was
be a
nothing
certain
in
way. It is
terms
just
of
who I
an
am.
adult trying
So
to
I,
unfortunately, this is a term that's being thrown
offered
around.
support
to that student and helped have a conversation
I
with
wake
the
up every
family,
day,
and I allowed that
um,
student to be able to
and
have
I
a
am
conversation
who I am,
with his father
and
about
I did
what
not
he was
necessarily
feeling.
like
And
choose
it
to
was
be a
certain
parenting,
way. It is just who
but
I am.
we did whatever we
So
could within
I
our
resources and support within our
offered
community
support to help
that
the
student and
family
helped have a
navigate
conversation
that
with the
because
family,
it was
and I
theirs
allowed
to
that student
navigate.
to be able to
But
have
then
a
also to
conversation
support that student
with
because
his
he was a
father
boarding
about
student.
what he was
And
feeling.
we needed to also support
And
that student
it
to move
was
from one dorm
encouraging,
to another. But
we
and
did
to
whatever
ensure
we
that
could
safety
within our
and
resources and support
if
within our
you,
community to help
if
the family
we don't
navigate
think
that
because
need to
it was
feel
theirs
safe to
for who
navigate.
they are.
But then also to support that student because he was a
I'm
boarding
not sure
student.
what to say.
And we needed to also support that student
because
to move from one dorm
it's-
to another.
I struggle
and
with
to
people
ensure that
saying
people
safety
choose
and
to be gay or that it
if
is
you,
their
if
choice
if
to
we
live
don't
this
think
lifestyle. People
that's
need
not
to
the
feel
case.
safe for who they are. People
learn. I'm not
they
sure what
grow,
to say to you.
they
Determine
determine
through their identity who
it's-
they are.
I
And
struggle with
we need
people
to set
saying
up a
people
society
choose
where,
to be gay or that it is their people are equipped to have
choice
those
to live this
conversations
lifestyle,
and
that's not the
have an
case.
opportunity for a student
To
to
talk
people
and to let them know
learn.
I'm struggling.
They grow.
I need to figure
They
out
determine
something
through
that's
their
really
identity
like who they are.
and we
Not
need to
necessarily
set up
like
a
society
society
where,
but I'm struggling with.
And
People are equipped to have those conversations
to
and
have those
have an
spaces
opportunity for a student
and,
to talk and to let them know I'm struggling. I need to figure out something that's really like
community.
not necessarily like bothering me, but I'm struggling with. And people need to be able to
Yeah, I wish I could
have those
offer you
spaces
a
available.
satisfactory
And,
answer. The fact
we're
that
not.
kids are
We're-
going through this at all,
We're gonna have higher students. Would you like to
discovering
respond?
who they are and growing. Yeah, I wish I could offer you a satisfactory answer. The fact that kids are going through this at all, it bothers me that they may not feel safe. Middle school and high school especially is supposed to be a time when kids are finding. I wish I could offer some kind of who they are and growing into the magic solutions that they're going to become. Aside from communication with the teachers, bothers me that they may not feel safe and in our schools with the parents of those students who may be. I wish I could offer some kind of for this magic solution we're talking about. Aside from communication, I'm not sure what the answer is. It all comes down to basic compassion. I don't know how you teach that. With the parents of those students who may be causing problems I feel bad because I don't have the answer for you, but I can tell you that what the answer is. It all suggests that you have, and I don't know how you teach that. I personally, I don't know how you listen to a lack of it for you, but I can tell you that in a compassionate way.
I would be happy.
Education
Suggestions that you
I would be
have.
happy to provide resources.
I
and
personally
curriculum
would be
that
willing
help
to
support
listen to
the
and to bring to our administrators as possible solutions to this problem, because it has to be addressed, or should be
and
addressed
have been proven to show to
in
grow.
a compassionate way.
Education and training.
Quickly,
I would be
you
happy to
go on
provide resources.
the town
and curriculum
website,
that help
all
support
the members, current members of the school committee, our email addresses are available to the public, so feel free to contact me and I'll get back in touch
and
with
have
you.
been proven to show to grow.
Kevin, do you want to respond?
I do, but real quickly, if you
May I
can go on,
respond to this?
The
It's
town
just a
website,
matter of
all
equality.
the members,
We
current
use
members
that
of the
word,
school
don't use it
committee,
anymore.
our
It's a matter of
email
equality.
addresses are available to the public, so
Why-
feel free to contact me and
I would
get back in
hope
touch.
that these things were reported to the proper
Kevin, do you want to respond?
officials, and I would hope that they respond. The way I
respond to this is, but I don't understand necessarily why, we used to use that word, now we use equity. That type of equality needs to be called out, and we need separate
I would hope
resources.
that these things are reported to the proper.
I'll give you an example, and I would hope that they respond. Excuse me?
There are higher suicide
But I don't understand necessarily
and-
why. And I would propose that not all of called out suicides
Separate resources.
are because of how the other types of bullying.
Well, there's
I'll give you an example.
for LGBTQ.
When somebody is uncomfortable
There
with
are higher
themselves
suicide
and
rates
how
for
they
LGBTQ.
perform. Okay, and then,
Other-
I mean, and I would, we get in trouble for using the word now. Not, but
All
there's
the
a clinical term. Those suicides, it's dysphoria, are because of how if you are uncomfortable with the body in which you were born in, when in clinical, somebody is uncomfortable with themselves, so if you are uncomfortable in your own body, you're already going in trouble for using those things there, but there's a clinical term for it. Don't necessarily, now, they may, if you are uncomfortable with the body in which you may be going through some clinical things that need to be worked out, that aren't necessary. So if you are uncomfortable in what somebody else is saying, you're already going through some. And the reason I bring this up is I was bullied as a child. Don't necessarily. My parents did bullying of all types. They left the Catholic Church. They were. But you may be going through some fundamentalist Christians that need to be worked out. You know, that aren't necessarily. They used to pass out the little things saying, "Come to Jesus." Somebody else is saying. Kids at school knew that. And the reason I bring this up is I was bullied for that. I was bullied for being, I grew up in the 80s. My parents, with the left the Catholic Church. They were Jesus freaks. Because I had a fundamentalist Christian. I was bullied because my mother sent me to kindergarten. We were straight to pass out little things. Now I'm coming to Jesus. I look back at the kids at school knew that. I don't. So I was bullied for that. I was bullied for being, the 6 foot tall kid in 6th grade. Because with the big nose and the big ears. Because I had a I'm not saying kids should be bullied. I was bullied because my mother sent me to kindergarten in 1st grade. There are various reasons. But you got freckles. I look back at things and I'm actually comfortable. To focus it solely on there's a safety issue and a knowledge issue, but we're only going to focus on those students who are transgender. Now, I'm not saying kids should be bullied. That's where I personally, there are various issues, but you got it should be safe for everyone. To focus it solely on the safety issue and bullying. If you don't feel safe, isn't any situation where you could be beat up because of who you are, what you look like? That's where I personally
think the issue is
have the
that
issue.
bullying,
should be safe
historically has been addressed. However, what Ms. Velasco is bringing up has not historically been addressed to the same degree or rigor. And so I think bridging that gap is important and necessary. And also there is a difference between equity. I think the issue is that bullying, I think, historically has been addressed. However, what Ms. Velasco is bringing up has not historically been addressed to the same degree or rigor. And so I think bridging that gap is important and necessary, but also there is a difference between equity and equality.
People feeling unsafe in the school system, everyone should feel safe. Whether they're going through that type of bullying and harassment, or whether it's another crime-based crime.
But to be clear, bullying, yes, there is a state mandated report, not necessarily what she is referring to. And I think that the important delineation here is she's offering one specific, not that the district doesn't have any way to address bullying. Perhaps to be clear, which is why it is, yes, there is a state mandated report, not necessarily what she is referring to. And I think that the important delineation here is she's offering one specific, not that the district doesn't have any way to address bullying, perhaps not that type of bullying, which is why it is an issue.
This was a question by our moderator this evening about potential regionalization of the schools for our candidates. Hi, question on behalf of Brandon Cannon of potential 2017, under a previous from 2017, I contacted every single school district, so you all know schools surrounding us. Now, this was a question by our north by different states. Currently not an option without special legislation of our candidates. I contacted the ARRS, ran the gamut of potential options. They notified me in 2017. I contacted every single school district surrounding us. As we all know, we are bordered to the north by the state. Currently not an option without social distanciation. And with them building at the time, I contacted the ARRS. They told me upon to them. They notified me in 2017. They are full. Even with the implementation of Regional School District, Yokemont Regional School District told me they were full. They had no contact with Kristen Cassavant. I called Airmont Hawk at the time, with them regarding at the time system. Mayor Hawk told me the Arden Public School System was full. Obviously, right now they are building a new elementary school, which is projected district, not full. Regional School District told me they were full. We can't go north, we can't go west, we can't go east, we can't go south. Hawk at the time, therefore, it proposed a minor of Mayor Hawk told me the Arden Public School System was full. Obviously, right now, they are building a new elementary school, which is projected to be not full, but close to full. Or shall we can't go north, we can't go west, we can't go east, and we can't go south. With going therefore, it potentially regionalizing of situations based on a 2017 study I did for a previous potentially unpopular as an option. What would you have building an additional school with any of our surrounding municipalities, or shall we say, based on the fact that all surrounding our state-led school districts reported to the going publication, they were potentially regionalizing over the border, what would be any potential potentially possibly see reaching out to any of our state legislatures, or potentially building an additional school with any of our surrounding municipalities, based on the fact that all surrounding studied school districts reported to the former publication.
My father always said, don't take no for an answer.
What would be any potential proposals you could possibly see reaching out to any of our state legislators?
Any option
or
off the
systems?
table. I think you have to look north, south, east, and west. Those may have been the answers in 2017. Fortunes of communities and schools. My father always said, don't take no for an answer. And I think that's what we need. I know that to do. I don't think it's any option off the table. Recently, you have to look, considering seriously, those may have been the answer in 2017. Fortunes of interest in possibilities and just to see about something right with them. I don't know if that would necessarily solve our problem. I know that we can count anything out. We also had at one time a school district recently here in New Hampshire considering seriously dropping out on their cancer regional districts. And so they decided to possibly contact funding that wouldn't be best for them. I don't know if that would necessarily solve our problem. Regionalization is something we actually have to consider and get eyes about a possible regional agreement, beating a dead horse here. They decided right now, consolidation, finally that wouldn't be best for them in terms of take place in the school space problem and meeting the needs. So I just don't think that. I don't know how far down the road regionalization is, and I can't sit here and say I have blame for you, but it's like it's going to be a dead horse there. But I think for us right now, I just think that's what we need, one of our answers, and all the options that are out there, school space problem and avenues that we can go that we have in our district. We're not at that point yet where we have to make that decision. But I can't sit here and say I have blame for you. It would be a perfect solution for us. I just think that we need to look at all the options that are out there.
Yeah, the numbers you're giving us are 5 years ago, and let's say that that's something that the Winchell Middle School needs to do. But I think we have to do an impact research survey and start kind of just seeing what the information is telling you for what actually the community needs and what they can kind of, the numbers you're giving us are 5 years ago, and let's say that once you do that, I think, yes, you could also, in conjunction with that, the impact survey, research survey, and start talking to, I think, maybe other regional schools, because it's not necessarily always what actually the community needs and what they can, and came from an area where once you do that, I think, yes, you could also, in conjunction with that, they were too small, you could one, and it wasn't something that just happened overnight. It's not necessarily always the best decision for a district in my mind. Yes.
communicating with state and local
where
legislators
schools did
and
kind of
trying to
consolidate and
determine
become
what the next
they
best
were
step
too
is
small
if
rural
we
schools
still have
and
those
they
numbers
became
done.
rural
And I mean, it
full.
wasn't something that just happened
and
overnight.
trying to come up with,
So
I think just
some
even
sort of
with that
solution
in
to
mind,
best meet
yes,
the needs of the students. But
communicating
again, state and local.
I don't know if I can give you a
legislators
perfect answer, but I think it's
trying
at
to
least
determine
doing a little bit
what
of
the next
research
best
and communication
step is,
and
if
we still have
and
those
seeing where
numbers
the
up
school
in
is in
terms of its numbers
and
and trying to come up with
may have to go.
some sort of solution to best meet the needs of the students. But again,
Knowledge is what you know. Wisdom
I don't
is
know if I
knowing
can
what you
give you
don't
a
know.
perfect
And I
answer,
don't
but I
know
think it's
about
at
this
least
issue.
doing a little bit of research and communication and seeing where the school is in terms of its orders and where it potentially may have to go.
Okay, I think
My
just to wrap
comments
up,
read,
I'd like to
knowledge is what you know,
Um,
wisdom is knowing what you don't know, and I don't know enough about this issue to
just keep it
give a
short,
good answer. So.
because we're actually past.
Things are always in flux with school choice.
Start the mission.
Prepare closing statement, but I guess I'll.
Okay, I think just to wrap up, it's optional.
No, I'll definitely talk. So, I mean, first and foremost, thank you for coming out. I was definitely super nervous. This is the first time I have ever really put myself out there in terms of running for any sort of office. And regardless of the outcome, I would like everyone to know that I'm definitely for students, the community, the teachers, and first and foremost, thank you for coming out. I what you get. And regardless of the outcome, I would like everyone to know that I'm doing it for my students, for community, the teachers, and just the town of Washington. I truly believe to try to figure out everything that I said tonight. Like I said, the information and who I am was just be what you get. And I'm someone who invests in communities. I have been in my previous school for 10 and now my current school for 10. And so I absolutely look to try to figure out how I can make
And that's
the
okay.
place better. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate, I would just say thank you for coming out. I know, I can tell some people in the community don't not come out to support me with, that's okay. My politics, or a couple did, and I do see those faces in my religious beliefs, or my trust and values. I just want to reiterate back to, I know my hope is some people in the community, everyone in no setting, agree will treat each other with kind politics or respect, and everybody religious beliefs or my that doesn't mean I agree with what all parents still keep coming back to. It doesn't mean that I agree. My hope is why things are a certain way setting will treat each other. Where I get the most pushback is when I start talking about my own children and everybody will be treated equally. What I want that doesn't mean I agree with what all parents do. As parents mean that I agree on parental why things are a certain way, parental rights, in regards to where I get the most pushback is when I start to say that take children, it takes a village to raise a child. What I want told to them, if the parents are involved, I think, and no, not all parents, we still the ones that are, to watch other people try to step in parental rights and teach our children in regards to our children, or what's okay. Saying that it takes decisions that they can make independent of discussion. If the parents, and no, not all parents are involved, but for the ones that are, again, watch other people try. I thank you for your patience and teach our children certain things. I joked with my wife, we're what's okay, stay home in case I was assassinated. Decisions that they can make independent of discussion. I appreciate the fact that I was able to get those are things that concern me. I felt I needed to say for those who needed to hear it. I thank you for your patience, regardless of gender and race and politics. Again, I just want to close with, I hope, but let our kids appreciate the fact that let us all treat each other with respect. I needed to say for those who needed to hear that stuff out of it. And regardless of gender and race and politics, again, I just want to close with.
I just want to end by again.
Let our kids
thanking
be
Manuel
kids.
and Fields of Celebration, Madam Speaker, thank you, Anna, for moderating. I also want to thank the two people next to me. I just want to end by again thanking Daniel and the Fields Memorial Library for having us here. It's unfortunate that Mike couldn't be moderating. I also want to thank the two people next to me for stepping up. I'd like to running for. I'd like to think ego would make it think that it's unfortunate that Mike couldn't be with us advantage. But I know that's likely not the case. I actually had a couple of people I spoke to early on this year to urge that. I'd like to run. I'd like to run for the seat, but I need to now. This is the reason I don't have an opponent. This is not my seat. Such a bad job. But I know that's likely not the case. I actually had a couple of people 3 years from now, I'm still around this year. One of you will step up and challenge me if I decide to run for the seat that I'm in right now. Some of you will step up and decide to run. This is not my seat. This is your school committee seat. Board of Health. This town needs your participation. Fully 3 years from now, I'm still around. We need your opinions. One of you will step up and challenge me if I decide to run to be and stay. Or some of you will step up and decide to run for coming tonight to hear what we had to say. Board of Health, hopefully you'll learn something. This town needs your participation, not just to go out and vote. We need your also, it takes need your relatives. Thank you. We need everyone to take part.
If I just like really quickly, while Mr. Ryan talks about participation, my name is Danielle, I'm on our board of selectmen. I just want to remind everybody about I was going to say you have until 8 o'clock